You ready?
Yeah.
Meeting to order, 7:08. You live, Angus?
We are.
All right. Some announcements. This meeting is being broadcast by local cable TV, recorded for rebroadcast. The most important is that the Westonbury Fire Department is hosting Santa Claus on 4th of town, December 24th. So the route is on the website in this packet. It's also on X at Westonbury Fire Department FD. There's also a collection of canned goods and non-perishable items can be handed to Santa's helpers. And the police department is on the lookout for a green subject with a heart 2 sizes too small. Awesome. Westonbury at its finest. Other same announcements call for volunteers on several different boards, commissions, and committees, and please subscribe to email town agendas and announcements. Public comment. Is there anybody here that wishes to make a public comment?
We've had 3 people show up already tonight for the Concom meeting, that would be directly to the top floor of the building. I just thought I would comment on that.
Rob's gonna get a stipend for that.
Start.
All right, moving on to item B, consent agenda.
I'm gonna muddle up on you.
All right, so Chris, you would like to remove one item from this?
No, I'd like to explain a couple. It's gonna be messy. I don't know how to remove, that's the process. First comment, to the best of my knowledge, we have not approved November 20th minute meetings. I did a markup on those and gave them to Max, but I've never seen them come back. So that's one.
They're not on here though.
Sure.
Okay,
So that, I just got out of sequence. That hurts my head.
We just got it.
Okay.
Yeah, we got
So November 28th, which we're gonna approve, I hadn't previewed them. They were in the packet. They were done by Angus. No, these are the ones you did with the short meeting I had.
I did.
No,
Okay. Well, what we did, they're fine. I'm just saying.
Okay, so you have not reviewed them. I was wondering.
That,
Okay.
and then I would have on the, December 4th, one minor correction.
So did you review it prior?
I had,
Okay,
but there's still another correction. The numbers are off a little, that's all.
okay.
So,
Do you want to send me those? Correction?
So refresh my memory on the consent agenda. Now, Chris, only allowed to comment on this?
No,
Okay.
the idea is that
Okay.
ahead of them being put in the package, you will
Yeah,
review
okay,
them and
great,
then make
okay.
those corrections.
Okay.
Typically, and I know this is new to the board, and I don't know, there's a hard fast rule, but what I've seen with other boards in other towns is typically there's a motion to approve the consent agenda, a second, and then a member can say, I'd like to remove sub item A, F, and D from the consent agenda, and then that's removed. Then the consent agenda that remains is acted upon, and then any items that are removed are separately debated.
right, but see, we have the minutes, then we have the licenses, and the minutes both had issues I just wanted to explain.
Yep.
So,
So would you like to remove them from the consent agenda and discuss them separately? It sounds like yes,
well, no, the first set I don't have to, they're fine.
but the whole, okay, so Rick, can you make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Sure, I'll make a motion.
As Angus just described.
Okay,
Let's
so-
do that first.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. And before we vote, correct, Angus?
Yeah, it's actually, it's always been a single member can remove something from the consent agenda. It's not a votable thing.
Okay, so you would like to remove the minutes, and then what other applications did you have questions on? All of them?
That's why I said the consent agenda is not gonna work on something that I don't even know what the process is. Just to sit there and say you're gonna approve a liquor license, I don't know what the
All right, do
criteria
you
is.
have specific questions on that license or on the process in general?
On both.
Okay,
Like, has the police chief reviewed them? Have there been any issues in the past? To just agree to give somebody a renewed liquor license, also, it doesn't say the expiration date, it says December 2023, but it doesn't. The one for the pizza place has to be drunk on the premise, but yet they have no seating there, so what are they, why
Yes,
are
they
they?
do. On the inside,
Hasn't been used for a long time, you've been in there lately?
I guess not.
It's closed off, it's takeout only.
So if I could, so with, for the pizza shop specifically, I've actually spoken with the owner, they haven't sold any alcohol because it's harder essentially to restart the process to getting a liquor license than it is to just renew it every single year. So pretty much since COVID, she hasn't sold alcohol.
Which should not be renewing a license, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
All right, so let's, are there any of these that you don't have questions on? Any of these consent agenda items?
Again, but I guess the overall process is, how do you evaluate these? I would think first and foremost, there should be a letter from the police chief that there haven't been any issues selling to minors or anything like that. We're just giving them a license without having no information, what basis to
So
sell.
I get updates from the state on any issues regarding liquor license sale, or liquor sales. And it's mainly because it's the last drink option. So if you get pulled over, they say, what's the last place you had a drink? You say this place, and that's where it conducts an investigation. There has been nothing for any establishment in West Newbury when it comes to where was the last place you had a drink, and it's not an option for Food Mart, and had no sales have been happening at these stores. So there haven't been any violations when it comes to those establishments.
But I would still question why we would give
Okay,
an establishment a license that's not selling anything.
all right, let's pull back. Would you like to withdraw your motion? Because clearly we're gonna have to go through these individually.
Sure.
All right, so, let's start with the minutes. Did you have any corrections on November 28th?
No, it's fine, it's beautiful.
All right,
I have no corrections on November 28th either.
you move to approve them?
Yeah, I move to approve the minutes for November 28th.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, December 4th,
One correction, item F, paragraph D, the numbers don't add up. This is for the roof on the building, 45,000 plus 27,500 does not equal 72,500. So originally, I think we did fund 27,500, and then we did give 45, so it should be 72,500, I believe.
so which number is incorrect?
I believe the 72, it
Okay,
should be 72,500.
all right. You got that, Jim? All right,
Other than that, everything, I can see very well.
okay,
Already
Yeah,
approved.
and I just have three minor things, and one is, again, FA, second line down, where read brief the room. I think it ought to say the attendees or something like that. I think that makes
step in the
sense.
room.
Yeah, unless this room has ears. And then at the bottom line, Jane's plans to flesh it out. I think that should be fleshed out.
Yeah.
Well, you never know.
I always rush it out.
There's a few things I like to flesh out.
Yeah.
And then in B, the third line from the bottom, maybe I said negligible. I hope that I said something more like was relatively insignificant, because, $45,000, I hopefully didn't refer to as negligible. If the recording says I said negligible, then so it should.
All right, so would you make a motion to approve as amended?
I move to approve the minutes of, December 4th. Yeah, December 4th.
Okay, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so going forward, you will work out with Max what the schedule is, so that you have enough time to review it and get it to him, so he has enough time to get it.
I've already gotten them
You did
in
before.
December 4th.
Okay,
We're all caught up on everything, so after tonight, once he gets it to me, he'll get it back within a day.
okay, great. All right, B, request for renewal of liquor license, so you have general concerns and specific concerns, right?
Well, Jim will address the overall concern that
Okay.
if there was a problem with the alcohol beverage commission, whoever it is, we would know about that.
Mhm.
That's good to know. The first one is, why would you give out a license to somebody who's not serving it? And just to maintain that forever doesn't seem appropriate, I guess.
So, essentially the way liquor licensing works is once you're granted a license, it's essentially every year you're offered a renewal. It's, unless there's some major problem, it's because you essentially bought the license and you own it. And so there'd be no reason for us to remove the license unless there was some kind of violation. They're paying us $300 a year to do nothing, I mean, in my opinion, that's good for us, not for them. That's a business decision that they're making.
So the basic, we don't have to renew these every year, in essence, that's weird.
You kind of,
No, you do, they have to be renewed, because they're only good for a year.
But there is no criteria or reason to say no, it's just, once they get it, they keep it.
I mean, the information in your packet is the same that's been before the board for many, many, many years.
So
If it's
there's a
not
fire
good enough,
department inspection.
that's something that you can ask us for next year, but this is never,
So what additional information would you like to see? I mean, the fire department did an inspection.
so the requirement, just so you know, the requirements to renew, because it's a serving license as opposed to the food mart, which is just a purchase, because it's not consumption on, there's the additional requirement of an inspection every year. There's no inspection needed for food mart because it's not on premises.
Mhm.
It's any liquor store, essentially, that's what it's considered, a package store. The only criteria they would need is make sure there's no violations of selling to underage.
That's why I would have thought the police chief would have a letter saying, hey, it's all good.
It's not a requirement, from a state standpoint of saying the police chief, but I mean, there would be an investigation, and thus the ABCC would tell us, hey, by the way, there's being.
So if they give you $300 and they submit this form, we just say yes, that's.
If they've already had a license.
And they're in good standing, which both are.
Jim, one question I had on the actual license, it said it expires December 31st and there's no year filled in on both of them. I don't know if that's just the formality. I mean, it said the date that it was signed, but above that.
That's something for documents.
Yeah, December 31st, 2024, that might be a draft. if you're
Doesn't say
looking at
that.
The sign, the ones we
Okay.
signed at the
Okay,
expiration
great.
date, yeah.
All right. What other questions did you have this? Okay,
I move to approve both the application for liquor license for the West Newbury Food Mart and for GM Enterprises.
second, all in favor? Aye. All right, class 2 used car licenses, do you have questions on these? No, all right,
there is, one of the three, if my understanding is missing a bond. You wanna elaborate on that?
Yeah, so,
Karina,
we have the bonds for, Newburyport Auto and, what is now known as Main Street. The Crane Neck has not gotten their bond, the bond had expired, he wasn't aware that his bond had expired.
mhm,
I informed him that we need the bond, we found out he's now got, I mean, the renewal, his bond counsel is just not sent it to him. So I would suggest approving, pending the receipt.
Send the receipt of the bond, yeah.
And if we don't get it, then it would expire and I have to report to the DOT.
okay,
So based on that, I make a motion that we approve the used car license for Main Street Auto, for Newburyport Auto, and for Crane Neck Auto, pending receipt of the bond from Crane Neck Auto.
second,
So that applies only to Crane Neck Auto.
Second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, any questions about items D, E, and F? Must be approved. Request to submit grants and the election worker list.
The grants, no continuing or renewing cost is my question. And then the election work is full disclosure, my wife is on that list and would be one of the workers.
Does he need to recuse himself?
No, he's not approving funding of the position, he's just approving that she will be one of the available workers, which she may not be for all of them, I have a lot this year, so.
And they were all on the consent agenda, so I would,
Yeah.
I approve, I make a motion to approve all three,
Items D, E, and F.
the D and F.
Okay, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. So going forward, what items would you not want to be on the consent agenda, Chris?
Anything I question on.
Okay, that's really helpful.
But again, with the license, I still think it's a very, loose process, or if there is no process, then we don't even have to address it. And if they give you the fee,
With the state process that we're following. So how about this, if there are things on the agenda that you have questions on, could you touch base with Jim ahead of time and then let me know if it should not be on there? Does that work? Or get your questions answered directly? I mean, Rick and I have been through this, so, you know, we probably don't have the same questions, but in fairness to you, you might. So,
You're asking a good question.
I'm gonna say, I'd still be concerned about those licenses next year, but nobody else is, so.
You'd be concerned about which, the liquor licenses?
And the process, yeah, if you're gonna actually review them, you should review them, not just rubber stamp it without knowing the liquor.
well, we're reviewing it in the packet. Jim has already done the legwork of making sure they're in compliance, so that's why.
And if there was an issue, we would be told of the issue by the state.
Okay, moving forward, item C, town manager updates.
Do we want to, out of courtesy for Fred, do we want to?
I didn't realize he was here. Yes, please,
Yeah.
let's do that.
Brothers in attendance.
All right, what page is that? Do you happen to know? Do you tell?
Actually, I can go, yeah, I can get there pretty quick.
Yeah, probably
Yeah,
open in
it's,
December.
Yeah, I do, I can,
125.
Hello, Fred.
Hello.
We're gonna take you out of order. I'm sure you want to sit around with us for the next hour, but.
Nah, it's okay. I'll pass on that.
All right, thank you for filling out the questionnaire again. Any thoughts or questions from the two of you?
I have one, and, I mean, this all looks good, and this is something I've asked before, Fred, and I don't think, maybe you didn't really understand what I was asking last year, or, I think it was at a committee appointment time or something like that. But I think it would be really helpful, and you may tell me that it's on your website, but I haven't noticed it. If there, were guidance as to trees that people might consider planting specifically to address temperature change trend based on climate change, so that we begin to plant trees, actively plant trees that are currently at the northern end of their range, so that as temperatures warm, they come closer to the center or more southern part of their range. Because it's gonna take.
Rick, let me in, if I,
Could I finish? Could I finish,
sure.
please? Instead of us, assuming that nature's gonna keep up, for us to try to help.
now, is it okay now?
Yep, that was my question, Fred.
So I'm looking at the tree committee website right now, and there, on the left side, there's a list of items. The third item down says climate change - trees to plant. And when you click on that link, you get a variety of considerations. And then you can also get climate change projections for individual tree species. And so when you go to that link, it says which ones have poor capability to adapt to climate change, which have good capability, and which have mixed results, and which may be newcomers. So I think that the information is there in significant detail, as well as native trees to plant. So I hope that that addresses your concerns.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, let me know, and we'll figure out something else. But and I believe, unless I'm wrong, that if you scroll down to the bottom, let me see if it's still there. Okay, so it says here at the bottom, it's about native trees. So where we talk about that. So there's a focus on native trees more than there is on climate change, at least on the main part of the website.
Okay, I looked at this previously. I think there's more detail here than there was a year ago.
Okay,
Question, Fred, on the membership, there was an item on our last agenda to add associate members. Is this something that the tree committee would like to change? You know, the, full members versus associate members?
well, the item on the agenda was for Cynthia Coburn, who had submitted an application, but she probably has withdrawn it. I tried to get her to answer my email about did she extend to go forward with it. So do you know if she's withdrawn her application? I know that's not what you asked, but I'll get to that in a second.
Last time I spoke with her, she said she would talk to Fred.
She what?
That she would talk to you.
Okay, I will renew my email to her. I've emailed her twice, so we'll see. The issue is that when we first approved the tree committee back in 2019, it was thought that 5 members were sufficient. As it turns out, we've always had associate members, and it's a question of, maybe the right word is comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y. Maybe it's procedural niceties, I'm not sure. But I always welcome the people, and I want them to feel as though they are a full member of the committee, you know, for when we discuss things. It's not like we're dealing with major issues of war and peace or budget. So I think it's, I don't know how to say it. It would serve us well to be able to have more members than just the 5, so that when we invite somebody new, I don't have to go into a long explanation about, well, you can only be associate member and technically you don't have voting rights. But on the other hand, we always want to hear what you have to say. It's okay, but I just think that, I mean, we're entitled to 7 members total in both categories. I would prefer if we were able to have 7 full voting members, if you will.
I mean, it's a fair point on committees that aren't voting on, you know, hearings or anything like that. I don't know why we distinguished associate from full members. So,
It's lost in the midst of select board determinations back in 2019.
well, it's the standard format. in
Yeah,
committees.
so every company.
Yeah, yeah. But I think it's a valid point. So, I mean, is this something we want to entertain would we wait till July or June to do that, or can we change that?
You don't need to.
Yeah. Do you have any issue with making 7 full members and not associates? Rick, are you fine with that?
I have no problem.
All right. Do you want to make a motion?
Sure. I move that we change membership of the tree committee to 7 full members.
And no associate.
Yeah, and no associates.
All
Yeah.
right, second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you so much. That really is I think it's a very nice thing to do for us.
Okay. I had one question for you, Fred. Scrolling way down to the end, when you talked about the other boards and committees that you work with, you mentioned the Planning Board and Conservation Commission specifically wanting to be part of their decision-making process. How is that working out? Do you feel like you're being consulted as the projects come before them?
You're talking about the Planning Board, not the Conservation Commission, right?
Both. You highlighted both.
Okay.
in
Well, the Conservation Commission has its own jurisdiction on wetlands. And they seem to have full ability to talk about what trees can and can't be cut down and so on. And Molly is a member of both our committee and the Conservation Commission. So right now, if there's any issue that comes up, we hear about it. There's been better communication or let me, I don't mean to say it that way. There's been perhaps more specific coordination with the planning board. Although I think it's fallen off a little bit in the recent years, in the recent months, because, I used to just show up for their meetings just in case. And I believe that they know that if there's any one of the special permits that comes in that involves landscape planning, or when Wayne was here, if anything came up related to tree removal, related to stone wall jurisdiction for the tree warden, then we would be notified, or we would hear about it and participate. I think with the change of the planning board specialist, the town planner, or I'm not sure the title, that nuance or that reaching out to us has been, it may have fallen through the cracks a bit. I'm not trying to point fingers. I'm just stating,
No.
potentially, and I do know that they adopted a policy. We asked that they put it in their regulations that when a whole group of other people were notified about the permits that were related, that might have tree related stuff, that we be added to that list. They didn't want to do that at the time. So they said, well, we have a policy of doing that. So they're by no means adversarial. We get along great. I just think it's one of those things that maybe it would help if I didn't have to show up all the time, just to be a presence and remind them that I'm here and interested in helping them out.
Okay. Angus, is there anything that we could do on our end to encourage that, or do you think?
Yeah.
Planners.
No, if you, not really. It's probably more on my shoulders than anything, although, I have a lot that I'm carrying around for that. So,
Well, because there was a change in staff, it might be worth reaching out to Sue Brown, the new town planner, and, just making contact and reiterating.
I have twice on this already.
Okay. All right.
So, and the only other part that relates to that is I have given the housing inspector the one sheet of instructions, hints, ideas about how to protect trees during construction. And I've asked him to, and the planning board agreed that it would be great if he, when an application came in, if he would just hand that out to the persons so that they would know how to protect trees during construction. It's a one-page handout. I don't know whether he's doing that, and I can ask him, but he was very open to doing that. There was no, sorry. There was no reticence on his part. It's just something that I'm hoping has happened. But by and large, the planning board and I get along just great.
Good. All right, Chris, did you have anything? I see you have some highlights stuff there.
Yeah, one section about how the select board and the town manager can better support your work. I think it's the most critical statement you have in there, not necessarily relative to the tree committee, but to the town. Says you want to develop a long-term plan for tree removal of public roadway ash trees that are dead and dying. You get an arborist involved, and not just ash trees, by the way, because we've got an awful lot of other dead trees. I'm thinking out on Turkey Hill Road, everything's dead out there. But yeah, that's something the town's going to have to look at, probably the DPW and conjunction. That's going to be a significant effort and a significant cost, and I think the town's got to get prepared to have to deal with it.
Yeah, and I know that Angus has had some informal discussion with one professional arborist whom I know and whom he knows, and about the cost savings, while indirect, are likely to be significant for the town. And I'll explain what that means. As we saw during the ash tree injection bid process, we got two wildly different bids, or maybe three. Two were up in the 5,000 plus range and one was in the 20-something sound range. So you never know how the tree companies are pricing this out and whether they're trying to, well, take advantage, if you will. I don't mean to cast aspersions, but I don't know how else to say it more politely. And what my friend, who's the professional arborist who talked with Angus, said was hiring a professional consulting arborist to review any bids and to help design the tree removal program probably would save us a ton of money from inflated bids that would come in from the companies that wanted to do removal. You don't know for sure, but that, at least we've seen some evidence of that related to the ash tree injection. So that's why I put that in, so that, you know, the DPW has responsibility for evaluating tree removals, and then it's you and the finance committee and me, but we're not really members of that industry and know where a bid would be overly inflated. So that's the idea behind using a consulting professional arborist to look at the bids that may come in on any, to help design the program and to look at any bids that might come in as part of that.
Is there, I mean, we were, appropriating money each year for tree removal, and now it's been added, it's a, part of the, DPW budget, right? And how much is that?
So, I think it was Wayne's first, budget, or so he brought forward an article of 50,000, that was then, and it was approved initially as an article, was then built into the operating budget.
Yeah.
How the sidewalk of trees, there was a certain budget year where that just was increased by 50,000, and that's been the new baseline.
So essentially, there's incorporated in the line item budget, but buried in DPW,
That's right.
and, you know, not as a single item.
Right.
This is $100,000 now.
No.
Oh, it's moved in. Okay, I misunderstood the way, okay. All right.
Yeah, and I'd have to look back at the current, FY 24 to see if that,
It's listed as $50,000, and I believe that original article was for 5 years. So, but as we know, that barely, I mean, that might handle 2%, 3%, 4% of the dead trees that need to come down, the $50,000 a year. So I think that Chris is correct that at some point we're going to have to, if you will, bite the bullet and figure out how to handle the very large costs associated with the trees, and that's just for the public roadway trees that need to come down. That has, you know, that's ignoring any other trees on public lands unless it's a particular tree is threatening public safety. Like, for example, if there was a dead tree that was overhanging the playground.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you, Fred. Appreciate your time and your work.
Yeah. And I just have one question. The way I
Mhm.
filled it out, I didn't see any year. So, and I didn't think we had done this before. So when it says accomplishments since the last evaluation, I just went back to when the tree committee started in 2019. Hereafter, is it your intention that if it's annually, you know, it would only be for accomplishments in the last year? Or
Yes,
okay.
yeah, this is the first time we did it, so that question's a little bit misleading, but.
Well, that's okay. This time,
Yeah.
I think it's fine. If you would be kind enough, when you send this out next year, just indicate what year you want it for. That's all.
Okay, we can do that.
Great.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. And I do appreciate all the time you help us out with. And I certainly appreciate the changing those 2 associate members to full members. That's really great.
Good, you're welcome. All right, have a good night.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Fred.
Fred.
All right, I guess back to what page we'd be starting on, like 30, 40. budget package.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to go to the NIMLAC and MOU first?
Yeah, so we put that on, at the time we posted the agenda, we didn't know if that was something, we'd invite Dwyer in for. He's, spoken to Chris about some of the questions that came up last time around, specifically in the NEMLAC bylaws that are, referenced in the MOU, providing for a commitment of 10% of the department's time. That was discussed in the prior meeting, so Chief Dwyer can talk to Chris, at some length, and, maybe Chris could paraphrase what came out of that.
That 10%, was there anything, is him? And there will be no diminishing of staff or,
So that 10% is how many hours?
he didn't define that.
Okay, all right, but he
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 can cover
will
it,
cover
it
it.
doesn't, yeah,
doesn't,
within
okay,
his job.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, and that was the major question that you had, right?
Yeah, I just didn't know, it was 10% of our.
Right, right,
It was confusing the way it was written in there.
Yeah.
Because they also made reference, a couple of lines down to a certain number of hours specific, if I remember right.
Mhm.
I don't have it in
I
front of me
thought it
now.
was 8 hours.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, so,
So the board had voted back in August to authorize the chief to go forward with joining NEMLAC. At that time, we hadn't seen, the complete MOU and bylaws, so unless there's objections, it would be my intent to sign the MOU and provide that, which was the initial request he'd sent a month or so ago to restart that conversation. So,
all right, thanks.
next item, I included the budget process and timeline. That's similar to the package that's been circulated in prior years. Obviously, there's a lot of details that vary year to year between the calendar and the budget policy direction, and this year, a couple of nuances like the ClearGov software. But the main meat of that is the schedule and the policy direction, which you'd seen previously at recent meetings. So that's really just included FYI, if there's anything you want to talk over on that, now would be a good time to do that. I did want to at least start the discussion of meeting schedule. Obviously, FinCom had set out 6 dates in February and March, and I know we all agreed the joint meetings went well this fall. So I don't know, looking to February and March, if the board would intend to maybe post some number of meetings on the same date as FinCom, or invite FinCom to come and see some of your regular meetings, but just so we can get a handle on the overall meeting calendar for those 2 months.
What's your thoughts on that?
So keep in mind, the first week of February and the first week of March, we excluded from the meeting dates because of something that's going on with one of our members.
Mhm.
Second thing is, what we really pulled them for was Wednesdays to be available. But typically, I would say to you that if they're available on a Wednesday, it's very likely they'll also be available if we wanted to do it on Monday, say.
Okay,
But we're happy to have you come in every Wednesday too. That, to my mind, that's as efficient as perhaps anything. We did elect to start with Thursday, February 15th. Because one of our members thought that for some strange reason, February 14th might be inappropriate to have a meeting on. So for whatever reason, we just went along with it.
all right,
So anyways, that's kind of the basis. It's up, we've never discussed whether you would always come in on our night, which to me makes a lot of sense, because
well,
really
so
have-
it's twice the number of meetings per.
well, it is, except that theoretically, you're gonna spend,
So I think what we did last time is you came to 2 of our meetings and we went to the rest of yours.
something like that.
Yeah, so
right?
if we could do, so you would probably need to discuss with your members.
Yeah, just work out, you have what we put on the table. If you just get me something that you're coming back with, then I'll just do the same poll.
Okay,
And all we're trying to do is, avoid, someone not having quorum, number one, is first and foremost in my mind.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is just to make sure that we're, letting everybody participate to the full extent that we can, which is why we said no to the first week of each of those 2 months, if someone could make it.
So do you think you'll need all 6 of those meetings? Or is one of those meetings an extra just in case?
Well, I don't think you'll need all 6 of them. We have stuff we have to do
Right.
besides what we do with you. So the 6 to me is, I'm thinking, yeah, we need all 6, but we don't need all 6 to be joined.
For budget. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, depending, again, ask Angus this because, it comes from all the department work.
Right.
So starting in the middle of February makes a lot of sense to me. Starting the first week of February, I would think we would just be causing ourselves a whole bunch of, but beyond that, I could see us maybe I think what we did before was we scheduled maybe 4.
Mhm.
And then we provided for a 5th, but I don't think we need all 6 joined. No. Yeah, so again, we've got to build in some flexibility, obviously, because we don't know how the departments are releasing that stuff, so I think we should think about maybe, Angus, we could consider just 4 joints at this time with the flexibility to add a 5th.
Yeah, I mean, what I've done in prior years is, put together an overall meeting calendar with different, departments or, articles, groups. And, different chairs have different objectives. Gary Roberts, when he was chair, his objective was that the, total amount of money considered, across the 4 or 5 meetings that his committee had was roughly, rough parity. He didn't want to see, police, schools, DPW all on one night, and then other nights where they're considering a much smaller. So we would strive for some allocation of kind of consequence in terms of dollars, and then typically the articles are taken up on the same night that the sponsor is there anyway. And we never know until the warrant closes how many articles there are. So normally I don't set the specific budget until right around when I'm presenting set the specific meeting calendar until I'm presenting the budget, typically late January, or right around the end of the month. So,
Okay.
and that's worked well. What we say to people, in the budget packet is we work with the departments individually to make sure it's convenient. We really bend over backwards to make sure that we don't just assign people times, we work with them or we work with the chair. So I think I don't see a lot of value in trying to get to great amount of specificity on each thing that we have in the past. It's always worked well.
Yeah.
I think the main thing I just wanted to introduce tonight was, where we'll be asking the board later tonight to revisit the meeting dates that have been talked about in the fall. If it does look like the board's gonna be either hosting FinCom or attending some number of FinCom meetings, that could affect, how you look at your meeting schedule.
Right.
That's why I was trying to get an idea.
Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna remain very flexible based upon what Angus is seeing coming through, and I agree, the flexibility is the big thing. So we just basically have narrowed down to the universe we're talking about.
Okay.
I don't hold to releasing things based upon dollar value. Because quite honestly, some of the large departments are so well run that we don't end up with questions. I would be more concerned with things that might bog the meeting down, and those could even be some zoning questions. So I don't hold to measuring them out so they're equal dollars in each of the meetings. I think it's more trying to figure out what's the most ready. And some of them, you can recognize, like some of them are gonna take up a lot of time. And if you happen to have 10 of them, we can knock off in one night, do it. Cause that's just the way life is. There are some no-brainers in all of this, luckily.
Okay.
Not everything is complicated.
So Chris, I assume because you're the liaison, you would be going to all the meetings anyway, is that fair? Okay, you wouldn't, I'm just trying to get a sense if we should, set aside at least one of our meetings to be on Wednesday to coincide with FinCom. I mean, would you be planning to go to FinCom meetings anyway?
I would try to go to them as
As you
as I can, and there may be one or two, there's one that's actually the second meeting as it's currently scheduled. This is pretty high probability that I will be gone most of that week. I don't know that for sure, but there's a good possibility. And that may come up with it. But the thing is that the meetings are virtual. If there's a virtual option, then we have a chance that I would be able to call in.
We always do the virtual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we
That's the
record
case.
it for
There's
our
a, there's a pretty high probability that I participate virtually.
All right.
So as Angus said, it's flexibility, you
Right.
know, as we go further, you'll be able to map it out better.
All right, but the intention is to have a joint meeting, that's what
Yes.
you did,
Yeah.
Paul, Chris, Rick, is that?
Yeah, I think it worked great, yeah,
Okay.
that
All right.
worked really well. You know,
All right.
and I think we all learned more,
Better,
And-
we
and-
learn
and-
more.
and it was time efficient.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
great,
Well, one thing I really liked about how, Rob did it this fall, and he kind of touched on this, but, you know, you wouldn't necessarily know going in exactly what articles, you know, instead the whole packet was provided. And they went through based on readiness, so there were some nights that, you know, they really went through a lot of articles, so, you know, the only, thing is if you need someone there to present the article, you have to know that, but I think it was really good to be able to provide, both the committee and the, board a substantially complete packet of articles soon after the warrant closed.
Mhm.
So we would strive to do that again, and that way you can kind of, you know, not end up with a, you know, log jam at the end, because there will always be some that will go to the 11th hour. because-
That have to go.
Because
And
they
that's,
have to.
that's why we do the 6, because, you know, it's just, that's way like this, we all know that.
Yeah. So one question I have related to the schedule is, is the FinCom still contemplating a membership change in the bylaw, because the warrant closes the 29th of January, and you don't have any meetings scheduled before?
Well, this doesn't necessarily have this is
No,
every
I
budget
just-
meeting.
I just want to make sure that
So-
if that's something you're planning, then that needs to happen.
Yeah, we should have further conversations
Okay.
about it. I'm gonna try and call a January meeting, that's one element of the January meeting.
Okay,
I wished I could say unequivocally that we would pursue that, but unless I have buy-in from a significant amount of members, then it's not gonna go anyplace like that.
okay, well, that's just one,
Yeah.
and Jim also pointed out that currently it says the quorum is 4, so that
Yeah.
should also be addressed if you are in a.
Yeah, the quorum is, the membership is 6, quorum is 4.
Yeah.
And so therefore, that's why scheduling is so important, because when you only have 5 seated, the 4 has to be attained.
Okay, all right, I guess, so I think we got a little off, it's not off topic, but it's more detailed than you needed.
No, that's all good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else on this schedule that we should be? Wasn't there a change in the schedule?
No, I sent out an updated today that had a couple of additional dates, so it had, February, oh, actually, my print copy doesn't have it, but, Kentucky's gonna have a public hearing, they expect to get the governor's, proposed budget right around the end of January.
Mhm.
There is gonna be a school committee public hearing, it's, they offered February 12th, Carolyn Cloud, said that wouldn't work for, so they said maybe the 15th. That would obviously, end up rejiggering the FinCom schedule, so yeah, everything's a little fluid, but anyhow, Kentucky will have a hearing on their budget on, the tentative days, either February 12th or 15th. Once I have that, you know, firm, I'll let you all know, and then they expect the school committee, to vote their budget, on March 5th. That could go later, but that's the date that they expect will happen, and they do not expect anything dramatic in the proposed budget in terms of operating budget overrides. But obviously, there's a lot of, you know, variables they don't yet know yet, so they can't commit to that, but at this point, they don't expect it to be a, you know, other than a status quo budget year.
Okay.
Good.
All right. One question I had on the article request form, that was previously only available in Excel and PDF, is that going to be in Word now? Because I found the Excel really difficult to work with.
We can make it available in whatever
Okay,
form people want, yeah.
okay. Any questions on stuff that Meg's provided in the package? Seems like you're pretty far along with this, right?
We're where we would want to be. I mean, I, you know, would love to have gotten the packet around, you know, shortly after Thanksgiving, and said it was about 2 weeks later, but based on where we were last year, we're about 11 days ahead. So that last year we were way behind because of the wage study, and that really created an enormous crunch on a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're about where we want to be. I'd like to start a little bit earlier, but I don't think it's really gonna be, I think it's a comfortable amount of time, and, you know, I put the same footnote I always put in, if anyone has an issue, just let us know, as long as Jenny and my pipeline is full, if there's some stragglers, it really isn't gonna be a problem. If everything came in late, that would be a problem, but as long as, you know, my guess is we're gonna start getting some budgets in the next week, because it's very simple in some
Yeah.
departments. Yeah, I think we're about where we wanna be,
Okay.
schedule wise.
Then your next update is on the personnel evaluation.
Yeah, I wanted to make the board aware, this was a big step to get this all pulled together. It was a couple of months of work, and, you know, I would have loved to, this is something that we're, you know, way behind. I would have loved to get done in the summer, or early fall, and that simply wasn't possible. But I think it came together nicely. I'd be interested in your thoughts, but I think that the, process we laid out, is a logical process. I think the forms that we came up with, I didn't include that in the packet, that seemed like too much detail, but they're good. And I think the idea of calibrating different forms to different, job grades makes sense, because there's different kind of, features of different jobs. So I want to definitely thank Rebecca. She gave me a lot of help on that. You know, now it's the execution, while I'm away for the holiday, she's gonna be working again. I think, I can't remember how many direct reports I have, it's on the order of 17. So, you know, that is gonna take me orders of magnitude, 50 to 60 hours in the month of January, so over and above my normal workload. So I've been saying that all along, it's gonna be a workload issue. So I would, you know, look to the board to ideally not take on things in January that we don't have to, but with budget town meeting, it's not how I would have liked to do it. I would, you know, and I think for next year, now that we have a good framework, I would love to have the evals done more like, you know, July, August, September. I mean, that's still a very, very busy time in the finance office and in my office, but, you know, there's really never a time that's not. So, but I have to say, I felt good about getting that sent around. I think it gets a little bit, you know, it's the exceptions that take the time, you know, some of the non-traditional management structures that we have in town. You know, we'll see how that all goes, but at least the ball is rolling.
Great. That's a big step.
It's a big step, there's a lot embedded in there, and, I also want to thank Wendy. She was a great sounding board these last several months. I mean, right down to the, you know, some of the real details on, you know, supervisory structure, or, you know, what's the threshold for evals or not, because you know, we said all, but we didn't, you know, we need to clarify that a little bit, just to make it all regularly scheduled year-round employees, so it's not just everybody who might work a couple of hours here or there. You know, so coming up with that language in a way that made sense, took some time.
Well, it's good to see some of the things on your list being crossed out.
Yeah, no, we're chipping away, and you can, I think for a lot of this, you have a pretty good handle, I think, on a lot of this, of where we are. There's a couple of things you may see that aren't really before this board, and you may wonder, but I think one or another of you probably knows about everything, because, you know, with the board commission committee liaisons, that's been a good opportunity to make sure that at least for one board member, they're really drilling down, and to the extent they want to, on the details here. Yeah, I mean, you know, we're never gonna get everything done, but, I think all things considered, I, you know, feel pretty good headed into, you know, a week off next week.
Yeah, I just think, you know, a year and a half into it, this is great. You know, the whole, you know, wage scale, grading system, means of, you know, of evaluating people. Obviously, there's still a few wrinkles that have to be worked out that I know are a real, you know, a real bummer to still have to do, but, you know, nailing down the rest of the job description, and that's, you know, but that,
Yeah,
but it's an impressive piece of work overall, that, you know, and, you know, so thanks to you know, I can't claim any credit, but Angus and Wendy, I think, you know, you've done a lot on this.
And it's important, it's been important right along, it's just, but it's hard to find anything on our work list that isn't important, so it's all about relative.
Yeah,
urgency.
but once this is done, at least it's a system now,
You maintain it.
you know.
Yeah, that was something would be a lot
Right.
better than
Right.
building from scratch. So I did include a couple of attachments unless there's specific projects you want to ask me about, which I'm happy to talk about anything on here. But a couple of just brief updates. We did get the ARPA clarification. I know I said this to you earlier, but I'll just say it here, and really with Rob listening as well. With the Treasury clarification, it does mean that in order to satisfy the requirement that funds be fully appropriated by the end of the calendar year 2024, they actually have to be under contract. It's not sufficient, you know, for the board to have appropriated them to a use. So that definitely affects, you know, or will affect our thinking on specific projects in terms of level of readiness. So I've advised, you know, the department heads who've been involved with these projects, and I don't think it's a dramatic change, and I mean, it is actually a pretty dramatic change, but I don't think it doesn't create a big crunch on us, but it's definitely something we're happy to know now, rather than like 6 months from now. And it definitely affects, you know, and I'm glad, you know, looking back, I think it was about a month ago, we had that ARPA report in the packet, which with 1 or 2 adjustments, you know, that's built, that's easy to update.
Doesn't this actually make things easier now?
In some ways, it forces some decisions. It definitely forces some decisions, so.
So if we were to purchase like a dump truck or something with the money, what would that mean being contracted? Just like a purchase and sale agreement? Or-
Yeah, I mean, I haven't read all the fine print, but that was my takeaway. Yeah, I mean, a signed agreement would be sufficient. Some other things this is probably a lot more paper than you needed to see on this whole phone procurement, but I included it really just so that you
That's a lot.
understand the enormity of this effort, you know? The funding was appropriated, and that's great, but to get this thing put together required an enormous amount of effort from a lot of different departments. I think it was gonna be really, really challenging to do for this building, and adding the public safety building and the library just increases the degree of difficulty substantially. So, you know, I'm really thankful for the staff that we have in place. There was a lot of collaboration and teamwork to get this done, including from our contracted IT vendor, Jake. He was a great sounding board, and just in the relatively short time it's been issued, there's already been a number of questions and an addendum issued that I included as well. And I think that I haven't talked to Caitlin about it in a few work days, but last I heard, I think there were 6 firms that had taken out the bid package, so.
And they're pre-qualified, right? That's the
Yes,
Tom Bryan
That's right,
platform.
correct, yeah.
I think we only had like 2 or 3 inquiries to begin with.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if this happens, let us know.
Mhm.
So the fact that 6 have already taken.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a major effort, that is, yeah,
So what staff member or department will be managing this? Is this Brian or is it you?
So once the contract is awarded, that's really when it's intended to transfer to Brian.
Okay.
I think, I think Christine Wallace will have a role, I think Jim will have a role with this building, obviously Dwyer's gonna be very hands-on with his building, Corinne with her building, so it'll continue to be a team effort, but we've gotten Brian much more involved in the last 6 or 8 weeks, and basically went through, like, once the procurement's done and the contract's awarded, he's really the contract manager.
Okay,
So,
good.
Yeah, I hadn't realized that, the 3 buildings were gonna be linked, and that makes so much sense, you know, it'll make it easy to communicate department to department, building to building.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of enthusiasm for it at the staff level. It's been very difficult to get the time, because it's really not something that's been a priority for any board or commission. I think this board's taken the time to understand that this is a real problem. It's not like a luxury, it really is an absolute necessity. And the lack of backup or redundancy that we have now would be a real problem if the system went down. knock on wood. So, you know, this really can't get done quick enough, and for those of us who've worked in different town offices with much more, you know, much better, you know, telecom systems, we know what we don't have here. And, I think someone on staff has described, you know, they'll get a voicemail and it'll cut off right before the person leaves their number. It's extremely frustrating, you know, it just adds that extra element of inefficiency to what we try to do every day.
So the RFP is on Combine now,
It
and
is.
walkthrough on January 10th.
Yeah.
Leading to, the proposals have to be received by 2/14.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
great.
The livery letter insurance policy. That under,
No, that's under, department updates,
all right,
so unless there's anything else for.
No,
on
okay.
section.
any other questions on the list, Chris? All right,
Did we wanna raise the dog question
yes,
tonight?
sure.
Okay, so,
Raise the dog.
yeah, so, you know, I sent around a bunch of info, which I was probably not new to anyone except Chris, because a lot of it was before your time, but not new to you in the community, but new in terms of what had been talked about. Long story short, we have an ambiguous animal bylaw. It does have some authority for the animal control officer, and Chief Dwyer's met with that, the ACO to make sure they fully understand and are exercising the authority they do have. But with regard to the basic question of do dogs need to be leashed or simply under voice control, it's been interpreted for decades that voice control is control. So what I had, you know, suggested to Wendy is if there's a majority on this board that would like to make that crystal clear, to actually, you know, propose an amendment to require leashing of dogs. My advice would be that the animal bylaw would be a better mechanism to do that than the no-harm management plan. So while certainly nothing you need to decide tonight, I wanted to float that because with, you know, the warrant closing in roughly 6 weeks, if the board would like us to work up some proposal on that, you know, it'd be good to get some lead time on that, so we could have something for you to look at, before the warrant closes.
What do you think?
I think it would make sense to do it as, you know, a townwide bylaw, to change the townwide, to, you know, tighten up the townwide bylaw. You know, because then that will be applicable at Mill Pond, and it sort of dodges the issue of the difficulty of revising things for Mill Pond specifically, but it gets at least that particular issue resolved for Mill Pond, and then we'll stop talking about it 4 times a year.
Yeah.
When you say tighten it up, basically eliminate the wording of voice control.
Yeah, right now it doesn't even, I don't think it says voice control, it just says.
I think it does.
So,
Oh, I thought it said
I mean,
voice control.
okay, so,
The Mill Pond management plan might say that, but at least.
Bylaw did, I read one, I thought it was a bylaw, I did, either way, that's the intention, just to clean up that little bit of language.
yeah, well, to require leashing of dogs.
Right.
Another part of the animal control bylaw says that dogs should not be allowed to run free in playgrounds, public areas. And so-
Anywhere except on private property, it
Right.
says.
Right, so I think the two of those need to come together.
Yeah, I mean, we'll, you know, we'll get into more detail, probably don't want to know, but I, you know, I think there needs to be consideration for some wide open feasible land for it.
Might be nice, like Groveland's Dog Park is one of the most utilized pieces of land I've seen.
Yeah,
Maybe at some point, somebody comes forward looking to do that in town here somewhere. Maybe on a larger, you know, larger parcel field or something, because people do enjoy it at Pipes Dave, it's just very inconvenient for others, well, gotta be a balance there.
I was over there this weekend and dogs are running all over the playing field, which is not
no,
allowed,
right,
you know,
yeah,
so
yeah, that was.
Was over where,
I see it.
okay.
Excellent.
No, they were not playing soccer. but- All right, so I guess you're,
Good, we'll pencil that in as a tentative article for
So what do you think about soliciting public input on that? I know that's opening a can of
We
worms. but I
definitely
feel like-
wanna do that, I think, we'd wanna have something specific.
Yeah.
You know, or maybe even a couple of options for people to chew on.
Yeah.
Okay,
There are also some, might other be things in the bylaw that need to be changed, updated,
Yeah.
fines, fees, all that kind of stuff, to make it whole, they'll look at.
Yeah.
The bylaw.
sounds good. And maybe get input from the animal control officer.
Yeah, I know she would definitely favor something clear.
Yeah,
That being said, I've been getting tickets, so.
I know,
Okay.
apparently she's telling people, okay, show me that dog is under control, and they can, so she gives them a ticket, so that's good. All right,
Thank you.
move on to department updates. Town clerk.
So, a resident had come in requesting, I think it's on page 86 specifically, a letter from the town addressed to Massport, essentially saying they can operate, or they're allowed to operate. With there being no policy or bylaw and no cab service in the town of West Newbury, we don't have a policy that exists. Instead of writing a bylaw, which I was advised by other clerks not to do, because creating a cab service, creating a livery service is very complicated and takes a lot of staff time. This was a suggestion that was given to me. This is the current operation for Boston, outside of cab and livery services, rather cab and limousine services by the city. This is what the option is. We kind of curtailed it on page 85 more towards West Newbury. So we're not authorizing cabs, or having to do permits and medallions and things like that, but more authorizing the issuing of the letter required by Massport.
Mhm.
And with there being so many kind of contingencies built into it to begin with, you have to get a livery license plate with a lot of background checks and things like that, but the state does for us without us having to actually put any money into it. The only additional fee on top of $40 that they'd have to expend for a business certificate would be a background check,
Mhm.
and they would pay for that. To the police department would conduct a background check, and they would give us a confirmation letter that they're okay with this person, or negative in some cases.
So this would become like a consent agenda item, once it's established.
I would consider this like a policy that you guys could implement and have it be a consent agenda. This person asked for a letter. They've done all the things and here's all the stuff that they've done.
So it's 2 pages really, the 85 and 86 that are the,
85 would be the policy.
yeah, and 86 would
Or
be
that
the letter.
procedure. Yeah,
Yeah, okay, got it.
And they're only requesting this because Massport requires it if it's going to Logan,
I believe it's not just local, but it's all mass.
any of the Massport facilities. It's not because of West Newbury, any special. need.
No,
Right.
yeah.
And can they operate without one now, or?
So he can do Uber and Lyft. But the benefit to being able to like sit in the cab area and the limousine area is beneficial to the driver. And with them operating a business out of West Newbury is.
So, I guess maybe I misinterpreted this, I interpreted it as that he was gonna service, his intent was more to service the local area. And I didn't dream that would be only West Newbury, but, you know, the local area, but it sounds like if he's gonna sit in the lane at, you know, the livery lane at Logan, that then whoever this is would be servicing pretty much any community.
Yeah, hence why I suggested the background check and I suggested a livery license plate because then it's, oh, well, West Newbury authorized this person to do the thing, well, we have background check and stuff like that, so it kind of
Right,
covers us.
yeah.
So this is because this person lives in West Newbury.
Yeah, that's why, yeah, 'cause his business
Is
operates
located,
out
yeah.
of
Yeah, I think this is great. It seems like a good workaround to try to establish. a
Well, it's a
bylaw.
factor that he does the Uber in the lift and he gets into Boston, he doesn't wanna come back on an empty load, so
Yeah,
he sits until he gets as close to home as he can and he bounces.
Or whatever.
so, so what do we need to do then?
Well, my thought is just the first you were hearing about it is rather than put it on as an action, just do exactly what Jim did.
Yeah.
Kind of raise it for discussion, and if there's support for the idea, to then put it together. Jim had asked, like a select board policy, I think that would be the right vehicle.
Mhm.
So if there's agreement that it's a good idea, you just put it into that format, bring it forward at a future meeting,
Okay, that sounds good.
presumably your next meeting, but I don't know what the holidays, but
Yeah.
a future meeting.
If I can get it done that in that quickly.
All right, great, thanks for.
One question on this, did you think it advisable to have limits on the insurance? Or specify which insurance you're talking about? I mean, is the minimum going to be adequate or?
So basing off of what is required for Boston,
Right,
I think you have to have insurance because of the livery license plate.
yeah.
You have to have a specific amount of insurance required by the state.
That's
right?
what I'm, well, yeah, so what I'm wondering is if in our document, we might not want to refer to that requirement. So in other words, it appears elsewhere, but that's not what you're proposing. I would just always call out the limits of insurance, because you know how some people operate. And as you say, it's a requirement up on page 84, so just have it part of our document.
Yeah, I mean, the page 84 wouldn't be what's being adopted, page 84 is what
Yeah.
the place does.
Right, but instead of just saying proof of insurance, I would call out what it is you want for limits, which insurance is the one limits, that's all. That just.
Sure.
Okay, great, thanks, Jim. The next item is, update on the public trail use review process. So this was, I mentioned it a few meetings ago, Michelle had pulled together this, trail use, public use document. And she and Graham, the chair of the open space committee, and Angus and I kind of collaborated on pulling this meeting together. I think every person except for one came. I was really pleasantly surprised.
It was
We had a really good showing.
incredible, yeah.
Yeah, so, so the slides that we had in here, were in the packet. The idea of looking at these several, more recent projects was just to demonstrate where we could have used some kind of trail review process up front. And then the checklist that Michelle was proposing is at the end. So, Rick, you stepped in, so I don't know. if you
Yeah,
have
I
any
was there,
comments?
no, I thought it was great, I thought it was good discussion, good presentation, good discussion, sounded like everybody, felt much more comfortable after the meeting than they did before the meeting, or not everybody, but many people were much more comfortable after they heard the justification, and, it made sense. So.
Mhm. I think one thing that we'll have to kind of fine tune is how this will work with permitting process. It's like the planning board process. At what point does this get pulled in? But, yeah, I think it was good feedback. It was good to have the homeowners association people and the planning board at the same table talking about stuff without it being confrontational. So. Angus, did you want to add anything to?
I would just say that, yeah, I think it's great initiative by, Michelle. She had approached me a couple of months ago regarding kind of the loose ends on some of the commitments that are made either formally or more often informally in terms of new trails and our interest at the staff level to make sure things get onto a cohesive work plan, and that if there's outside resources, whether that's funds for engineering or construction funds or permitting or whatever, that we have kind of eyes wide open and that we can follow through on the commitments that the town makes. And, I think it was, it took a couple of meetings to get to this meeting. But I think by the end, people understood that was the spirit in which it was offered. And I did make the point, so I want to make the same point tonight. It's not a regulatory process. It was never intended that way. It's really a guide. We think it'll allow these to go a lot more smoothly. But I think that, Wendy had, is there something the board should vote? My recommendation was not to leave this as an administrative document that the conservation agent basically controls. That way she can tweak it as we go through it and see what works and what doesn't. But rather than a regulation that's gotta be, it just creates some bureaucratic, process. So it's kind of a good faith process. There are some things in here that probably won't be applicable to every last issue, and people can just say not applicable. But our hope is that, going forward, we don't just continue to add to the backlog, because, before the ink was even dry on the purchase of Sawmill Brook, we have, which by the way closed on Friday. There was already some, different people with different perspectives on what would happen, when it would happen. I think last week's meeting helped to kind of, people to see why that is problematic.
Yeah, I think Sawmill Brook will be the test case for this review process.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item, submittal of the River Road subdivision application to the planning board. So I guess my first question just is, what is our role here? Is this just a general review, or are we being asked for an opinion?
So in the normal course of things, the plan is circulated to other town offices, so you're certainly, invited to provide comments, just as any other, any member of the public or any, town board or commission. So you don't have any regulatory role, as you know, but, and I would always advise anyone on a subdivision to frame comments in terms of whether things do or do not meet the regulations, rather than more qualitative, like, oh, I like it, oh, I don't like it. That's not really what the planning board's looking for. It doesn't meet it, and if it doesn't, is the waiver justified, and is there a public benefit served, and so forth.
The biggest concern, I sent the email when you asked how we're gonna address it, is safety, and that's the line of sight is not available. That's the only thing I think that, I don't know if the select board should be getting into the width of the driveway or things like that. You got Concom and planning board and other appropriate parties dealing with that, but I think the safety issues that could leave the town with a liability is pretty important. Not having that proper line of sight, I think that would have to get addressed.
And that's one of the waivers that was requested.
Yeah, a number of waivers,
Yeah, it's quite-
personally, glad I'm on the planning board, because it seems crazy. Just throw the regs out and if you've been by there too, the way they're going in, it's excessively wet.
Right. Yeah, I haven't looked yet.
It's flagged, you'll see it if you're out biking.
I guess, given the vulnerability study on River Road right now, I just cringe every time I think of more development along River Road. And, I think anything can be not denied based on that. In fact, not. But,
I think we've got a lot of issues to wrangle with the way they're combining the two lots. and frontage, and
right.
Yeah.
That to me is a planning board, we shouldn't even be sticking our nose in that level of business, but like I say, the way we put a line of sight, that creates a huge liability for accidents, and without that, I wouldn't even consider it, I guess, that's.
So I assume it's named Eagle's Nest, that isn't where the Eagle's Nest used to be. It's not
Not
gonna
the
be-
one I know, there's one down with the,
Well, no, those, the classic is you name a development after something.
oh, we used to have that cartoon planning board out there. No, the Eagles Nest is down by Lydia Cruz.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So this is before that,
Okay.
right?
Well,
So are you guys gonna make comment to the planning board about the line of sight? Because that goes to the road, which is
I would think so,
something
yeah.
that you have to be concerned about.
So what is the proper format for that, Angus?
I don't think there's any, rules. I
Not
mean, you
proper,
could-
but
Yeah,
how-
we could, I would tend to, I put a star next to it, typically, within a day or so after these meetings, Jim and I go through all the follow-up items and, we tick off the easy ones, and, so I would just be inclined wanted to send through an email, I can copy the select board account. That way, if you want to elaborate, you can, but
Okay. Anything else you want to highlight?
No, because again, I think the rest of it's outside of our purview. As a citizen or resident, you wanna go, that's fine, but I think as a board, we have to look at what impacts the town, and that's generally the component that concern me.
So wasn't one of the waivers about the turnaround for emergency?
Again, planning will address kind of fire, get in and turn back, and all that stuff. I don't, again, it doesn't look satisfactory to me, but that's up to them.
So the only waiver request you feel is in our purview is the Wednesday? Not our.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the right way. I just don't wanna think we should be concerned.
The one that
about
we should point out.
It creates a liability for the town.
Okay,
Again, the planning board are pretty smart people, and they'll
Yeah.
know how to address the others, I believe, and Concom will be on it, and
Mhm.
I believe they're run by the fire department too.
Okay. All right. Next item, town planning report. Any questions on anything in there? News? No. Board mission committee update, we did the tree committee questionnaire already.
thank goodness for Brett. Imagine if he was still sitting there.
You'd be asleep.
He would not be in a good mood.
Yeah. Chris, you wanna give us an update on the working group?
Who's working? I've got two updates to give you.
PRC working group,
Yeah, that was fun.
yeah.
Um,
So is there just a disconnect about the purpose of it?
yeah, we met. What's that's right now. Anyways, we had a meeting almost 2 weeks ago, as of Tuesday.
December 5th.
Yeah, and Carol McLeod from Merrimack was there.
Mhm.
Chris Herman, Merrimack Select Board, they had their FinCom rep, myself, Kathy Castronellis, and Jonathan Seymour sat in for a little bit. Chris Manning, we made him the chair, Kathy was the clerk. The intent was to go, Angus had put an agenda together, pick the chair, schedule some meetings, and how do you move forward? Kathy Castronellis put up on the large screen a new and revised markup of the regional agreement that she had just done that day, and wanted to entertain it item by item. And I said, we can't because we don't have our FinCom, our town manager, and notice Grove, and that wasn't the intent of the meeting. She kept going forward with that, and I said, absolutely, we can't do this, we've got to schedule meetings for that. And I said, further, it was our understanding that the document that was presented about a year ago was in general agreement consensus with the three towns, and we're gonna be working to reconfirm that and to look at the issue that Kathy had presented at the regional meeting with the school.
Mhm.
That's, the meeting went off the rails, there was no confirmation on that. So then they were going to schedule meetings to work on this in January, and I said, well, if you go in January, the meeting, the schedule's gone for the spring.
Yeah.
They don't think it is, they can go to,
But then it's gotta come back to the select
Select
board.
well, yeah, but they wanted to get it voted and then go to the DESC. I said, no, that's not how you do it. We're not gonna go through the process.
Yeah.
So Chris Manning was going to send out an inquiry to the 9 members as to when they could meet in January. I've seen no email. Kathy Castronellis was going to forward her document to Angus, who was gonna blend it in with ours.
Yeah.
None of those items have happened.
I did see something come in my email today, that I really didn't even have time to.
Yeah,
look at.
that's,
Yeah, it looks like, yeah, 4:08 PM. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that was an earlier. No, I think it came in from Rebecca. Anyhow, I saw something come in today this morning, with a markup, looks like Kathy had emailed something to Rebecca over the weekend and she sent.
Yeah, but.
it was a very difficult meeting.
Oh, that's
Because
really
they're trying to bring it all the way back and start over again, which we can't do at this point, and with no plan. The one thing both of them made clear, which was very surprising to me, is that the option about may or shall on having an elementary school was a non-starter, but yet they previously, and we've got an email that stated that both towns thought that would be an agreeable provision. So I don't know where this is, it's not gonna be, from what I can see, gonna be able to make Springtown meeting, which is fine because there's nothing critical here.
Yeah,
but I don't even know how to function with a group that works like this, so. I'm hoping we'll get all 9 members together and can get something going, but Chris is the chair until he puts out request for dates in January.
So what do you mean all 9 members, including the FinCom?
You get a town
town
manager or a town, whatever, finance director, a FinCom rep and a select board, that was the makeup of the committee. So,
So it's really frustrating that we did the work.
you could have had the
instead
meeting.
of- All right,
And from what I did here, I think Kathy is frustrated and thought we weren't being fair with her, but it was as fair and diplomatic as you could be. I wasn't gonna go down the road of starting in on reviewing a document I'd never seen
Mhm.
with an incomplete committee.
Yeah, well, you didn't even have a quorum, did you?
No, because you only had one from Groveland,
Yeah.
one from West Newbury, yeah, so.
all right, so this is pretty much off the table for Springtown meeting.
I
mean,
I
guess,
feel
you
like
know,
it's way off the table
Yeah.
for Springtown meeting.
Okay.
And there's gotta be some way to get together and move it forward logically. You can't go forward and then revise your revisions and go back. That'll never work.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, thank you for the effort.
We're doing, there'll be more meetings, so.
All right, item C, cable advisory committee, cable contracts. So we had looked at the contracts at our last meeting. I brought this up at the CAC meeting last week. And I asked them to pull together a list of their concerns or wants for the upcoming contract negotiations. They said they view their role as supporting the select board. They don't want to be out there doing negotiation, which I think is fine and understandable. So I just wanted to update on that. So once I get their recommendations, I guess we'll circle back and figure out where to go from here. So that's that. All right, F, action items. First is the RFQ for the children's castle. So I guess I wanted to just first ask, this seems to be something that would be under your purview rather than the select board, so what specifically would you view this, is just issuing the RFQ or?
Yeah, because of the, my reading of the legislation, it's under my purview, provided the policy is set by the board. So procurement isn't something you decide. I mean,
Right.
it's got to be bid. It hadn't been bid historically, but that's all.
Yeah.
What I asked McCarron about it my first month or two on the job, and he kind of acknowledged that, oh yeah, it really should be. And so we
The
started.
chief procurement officer.
Yeah, it was full plate. So anyway, so my main question is, in terms of, rental amount, do you want to specify that in the RFQ that goes out? And if so, I wouldn't think, unless you want to pick like a arbitrary percentage, which you might be comfortable doing tonight, you might want to, I don't know what you'd be looking for in terms of.
Well, it looks like last time we went up 2% a year.
That's right.
but this is with that tenant. You go up to an RFQ, it could be anybody.
It could be anyone, and it could have been anyone, back then.
So I would put a minimum number in, what you want, and
Yeah.
they can give a bid proposal to something higher.
Yeah,
I mean, in terms of a policy, I would like to see the increase tied to something tangible, and I think we could use the same policy with the no ledge.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's market rate or something,
I'm sorry, the same policy with,
to what the increase should be.
Okay,
Like
yeah.
have some objective criteria that you use to determine what the increase would be. I don't know where the 2% came from, is it tied to the cost of living increase or,
I think that's essentially where we were at that point, is
Okay.
we were just matching what was being assumed for, reasonable cost of living increase at that point. And who knows what that is now.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
But I mean, there must be. a
20%.
that.
yeah,
Didn't you also have something on the plate about energy costs or something?
no, that's with,
No,
Learning Tree.
But that is a question I've got though, so we'll get to that.
Yeah,
That's town hall.
Town hall, okay.
But I think, at a policy level, we could have the same approach toward determining what, increases in rent would be in those two spaces. I don't know what the criteria is, but that would be my only suggestion, is to tie it to something objective.
Can I ask a couple of questions? First question, is there any, other than children's cast, any demand for this space? I mean, you're gonna put it on a proposal, they are the only ones who could bid.
You mean,
Correct.
only ones, you mean other, only childcare?
Well, no, suppose some corporate entity wanna put offices in it, you know,
Well, I think the form of the RFQ would,
it's gonna state that.
yes, yes,
Yeah, I mean,
It'll condense it right down to.
yes,
Yeah.
right.
so, I mean, this is something that I think is a really important public services provided, you know, that is needed.
So basically, they pay $151,000 a year, but the town pays electric and all of the utilities. Do we know what that total is on the offset?
I do know for, last fiscal year, because I was actually looking at that today for a different reason, so under the terms of our lease of the paid school to Pentucket, they assessed us a single time per year, typically in May or June, they send us Pentucket sends us a letter where we pay a fixed percentage of the total utility costs, and that's to account for the children's castle, because right now that all goes through Pentucket's books. So the amount that we paid Pentucket in FY '23, the operating budget was between $17,000 and $18,000. And, I'm happy to share, like, the lease, I wanna say it's like 8.5%, somewhere in that range, but it's based on the square footage. And then, we get a single one-page memo from Pentucket that says, these were our total, cost for electricity, heating and cooling, this is 8.5% of that, therefore you owe us X.
Seen that in 130 plus or minus. Roughly.
Yeah,
I just want to find out if it's 100,000.
oh, God, no.
You don't know, that's.
Yeah, no, you
I
wouldn't.
wouldn't want to pay that building.
Yeah.
There's no mention, well, first of all, it says Children's Castle Link, it doesn't mention who the people are, I would think the least should, right, at some point. But, second, and that's not critical. What about outside areas of playground? It doesn't mention those either, I assume they use, it talks about parking, but it doesn't reference the ability to use those.
They have their own playground.
Yeah,
Separate playground.
But it doesn't reference.
yeah, I mean, it could definitely be, it could be delineated much more specifically.
Well, if they use the space, yeah.
Yeah,
And then is parking separate?
It says they're allowed to use the parking.
The general?
no, it's not separate.
Yeah.
Yeah, the parking's transit.
Mhm.
Well, this is gonna be an RFQ issue, it's gonna be target specific, basically.
Mhm.
Then we should just, rather than look for a number, tell them what the number should be, doesn't that make more sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't feel that this board needs to say what the number is, I think we just give guidance to Angus about what we're looking for, and he should be able to make that decision. Isn't that right, Angus?
we can, it's, however you interpret the,
I interpreted that.
I can do this as long as it doesn't conflict with any of your policies, fees, or other practices. So,
They don't have any.
right, so I think, looking at the last few years and what that's been and what's been the cost escalation on that, fee that we pay Pentucket, that's a, great basis to do it.
Okay, so we just have to vote, do we need to vote to authorize the RFQ or?
I don't know that you need to, this is how we did it 3 years ago, and so that's why I included the minute from last time, just to follow the same steps. But keep in mind, the last time, this is the first time the town had done this in a couple of decades, so I had to explain to the owner what we were doing, why we're doing it, what the law is, the fact that there was a potential that it could be someone else. That was obviously very destabilizing, so I was looking for kind of board, just so that it wasn't like the big bad town manager.
The new guy in town.
Yeah, so it's the law, but no, it is the law, we have to do it, so you don't need to go ahead and issue an RFQ, and we'll take a look. Last time we're ahead of where we were last time, so we had time to look into the rent level a bit. and not slow down the process.
Okay. Rob,
So just a couple of things. How long is the expected lease?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
And so, if we were ever to do stuff with Page, at some point in time, does it make sense to try and separate out utilities at that location? Because if you're doing a rehab, you might have an opportunity to make that building whole as a unit, because it's always better to have a person paying for what they use, because then they can pay attention to what they use. And right now, it's just this number that magically appears. The last thing is, you have a section in there for liability insurance. I would just make sure our insurer is comfortable with what we're requiring of the lessee.
I think isn't that an interesting question, I guess, about, MIAA, I think, told you that if this was an historic usage, they wouldn't allow it at this point, didn't,
They definitely said that about the old town hall,
okay. I thought-
where that's the primary
because-
use, but no, you're not wrong, you're not wrong, you're not wrong. They said that, that basically, that Maya as, that they're in the business of ensuring public sector entities that are operating in ways public sector entities normally do, and this isn't
that.
Yeah, but what
And,
I'm talking about is
yeah.
making sure
Yeah,
that.
and they did, I'm sorry to interrupt, but they did say something along those lines, because every year I review this with them and we go through everything, as part of our annual, review, so they have copies of the lease, they have everything. But they did say at some point that, if we were looking to do this for the first time, they would probably tell us they wouldn't insure the building. But where it's been run, so.
What I'm getting at is, anytime you have insurance, but someone else is involved, you wanna make sure that the coverages you require of that other person are good, that they're at the limits that you want. So for instance, when I look at $1 million today, I don't see, that's not nearly enough. So you deal with an insurance person who could advise you as to what to require of these people, because you need to be relying on their insurance for a certain level of protection. That's all I'm getting. That's all. And so to me, $1 million nowadays in insurance is nothing. They're running a school for kids, so you gotta, 2 million would be where I would start. That's all.
Alright,
No, good point.
okay, item B, acceptance of the deed for the Poorhouse Lane property.
We do have the deed, so upon your vote to accept it, we would look to you to sign it tonight, we'll get that recorded.
Okay, so the select board would be signing it, not the conservation
Both,
commission?
both, yeah.
Okay. All right,
So I move that we accept the deed and sign it
or,
for house, the first of the land on courthouse,
right,
otherwise known as Thornhill Brook property.
second. All those in favor? Aye.
How would you oppose it?
No. Item C, requests to authorize the town manager to sign the IMA for the Public Health Excellence for Shared Services Grant. So what is the origin of this? How did this all get started?
I don't know exactly, I think it grew out of the regional COVID clinics, where, as you know, the Merrimack Valley was way ahead of the curve on establishing a formal collaboration, a formal regional partnership with municipalities, and that resulted in the Governor Baker's first, and I believe maybe only recognition of a municipal collaborative as one of the early vaccine, approved vaccine entities back in the earlier days of COVID. So I think that this grew out of that, but I've really not had any direct involvement, any or indirect. I really have had nothing to do with it. This was kind of dropped on my desk on Thursday, saying, and
Has to be signed tomorrow?
Wait,
Well-
I've heard this song before.
It seems like, I did talk to Paul today, you know, and I had the follow-up correspondence, you know, we don't have the attachments that are referenced here, I guess those aren't available yet. You know, it doesn't cost us anything, it's, just a benefit, but I can't really articulate what, you know, with everything else I've been doing, I really haven't even had time to read it, so.
So do you need anything from us?
Well, I certainly would never, I don't have the authority to commit this town to an intermunicipal agreement, so I wouldn't sign it without a board vote.
I think I would wanna look at all the.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
there.
I think that's a fair,
Where'd this come from, Board of Health?
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, that might be a chicken and egg thing in terms of the grant agreement, because I think that maybe their intent is to apply as a regional entity to receive the grant, but I think to at least learn more about, you know, what it is they're intended, what services they're intending to perform, and, you know, how's that gonna be, like, what's the decision making on that?
mhm.
We get the Board of Health in here to run through it with us, do they know more about this?
Well, so Paul mentioned, Rick, that you had been at last week's Board of Health meeting, there'd been some discussion, you'd had some questions, and, you know, Paul seemed to think that you'd had, your questions answered, I don't know.
I'm trying to recall the exact questions I asked regarding it. I mean, we talked about a variety of things. I haven't seen this particular document, and, to be honest with you, I scanned it before this meeting, but I didn't read the entire thing, in detail, and, yeah,
Since there's only one signature, you know, and I haven't gotten the sense that there's any huge urgency, and it was just given to me 2 business days ago with no transmittal memo, no email, no anything. It just, Rebecca was like, oh, this got dropped off.
Yeah,
You know, it was Thursday evening, I glanced at it for the first time and sent the request for more information. So I think if this is tabled to your next
think that'd be
meeting, I don't see any harm in that.
and so we'll have the 2 exhibits also.
Well, I don't know if that's grants they've already applied for, sure, but it may be that their intent is to apply for.
I would assume they would have the scope of services.
Yeah.
Well,
I
that,
don't know,
yeah, they would know what the intent is in
Yeah.
terms of the scope.
Okay.
could,
Alright.
could, before the next meeting, could we get this all as one separate packet, one
Mhm.
separate email, you know, all the supporting
Yeah,
stuff, thanks.
yeah, I mean, right now, what you see is pretty much what we've got.
Right, yeah, no,
Yeah, to the extent we have more, yeah,
yeah,
we can, that's easy to batch.
great, thanks.
We also find out the other towns have already signed on to it, just out of curiosity, Amesbury, Georgetown, Groveland, Merrimack, Newbury, Newburyport, Raleigh.
The only signature we have is Bob's, but that doesn't mean that they're not simultaneously reviewing that.
Right.
You know, and maybe even have signed it, we wouldn't have. I did see in one of the, I think in the email today from Paul, if you look down the thread, it seemed as, I want to say it shows some correspondence going back to earlier in the fall. When I scroll down, it looked like, yeah, it looks like there was an email sent from Amesbury November 6th. Hello, Greater Amesbury EHE Partners, per our meeting last week, see you attached revised intermunicipal agreement for you to present to your respective board of health and city council select boards. So it was sent to health on November 6th. So, and I got it, December 14th.
Okay. All right. So we'll table that to the next meeting. Okay, item D, review of the draft MBTA community zoning. So this will be discussed at planning board meeting tomorrow night. Their intent is to, once the consultant finalizes the change, to submit it to the state for preliminary review. So if we have any comments, it'd be good to.
I did meet last Thursday, just a couple of days ago, with Brian Murphy. And his take on it was that he did not think they'd probably get through it tomorrow night. They're definitely talking about it tomorrow night.
Yeah.
He thought it would take them a couple of meetings, and he also said that he specifically, even if they felt, he said they do want to kind of get the ball rolling with the state on the bylaw review sooner than later, although he totally agreed that with their next meeting on January 2nd, there's absolutely nothing lost if they, you know,
Okay.
refer it out in a second, because no one from the state's gonna be looking at it over the holidays.
Yeah.
We don't know that. But he said he didn't feel that the planning board, he didn't think that they would necessarily make a decision on whether to recommend one district or two districts in less than a couple of meetings. So it seems like he's looking at it two ways. One is the specific language, and have they got that right? The second is what locations they'd like to propose.
Mhm.
So where, their next meeting after tomorrow is, January 2nd. That's one we had penciled in for a board meeting, but I'm suspecting we probably won't meet that night.
Mhm.
So I didn't know if, you know, if the board wanted to be really hands-on with that, if you might want to send a contingent to their either tomorrow or January 2nd. Just to better understand what the, you know, what the issues they're looking at.
Yeah, I've been going to the meetings discussing this, and the last meeting, they said they were gonna submit it to the state tomorrow, so it seems like
Yeah.
something must have changed.
Yeah, I think it seems like that was the planner's goal, but I talked with her, you know, last week, and I told her how important it was that, you know, whatever ends up getting proposed, you know, ideally has the support of both boards, and that if there were any questions or concerns, it would really be good to get those on the table before it goes to the state, at which time it could be more difficult to change.
Mhm.
And then it was subsequent to that, Brian reached out to me for a completely different reason and asked for a meeting on that. So we ended up, he stopped by Thursday and we talked it through. And after talking with him, it seemed like, you know, that wasn't the timeline he
Okay.
was anticipating.
All right, so do you have comments?
The 3 pages.
No, boy. Well,
I'll make it short. I've never been a fan of this from the beginning.
I know.
It feels to me like extortion from the state. They're claiming you're a satellite MBTA community and we're getting penalized or held to a task. And I looked at it like this: if a developer come into the planning board and said, I want to take that 7-acre parcel and throw 90 units on it, they're gonna get thrown out of town area so fast because it doesn't mesh with what West Newbury has done for many years to maintain the rural character. It's just so out of character for the town. But for the state to say you've got to sit there and do it, or we're gonna withhold money, basically, it feels like extortion. And to even comply and go down that path with me is so distasteful, because once you take an incorrect premise and you continue down on it, it's never gonna get better, it's only gonna get worse. So that's the philosophical component, and I could really go through the notes, but I won't bore you. But then there's an economic component that plays in, and we learned this on the original comprehensive plan. And that is, you pay X amount of dollars to educate a kid in the school, which comes out of the tax base, and as we found out, you bring in more kids, the Pentucket formula can change, as will the Whittier formula. At 90 units, if I did some rough math, if there's 1.5 kids per unit, whatever, the taxes versus what it would cost, you're gonna lose, well, I'll put it between $1 million and $2 million a year in tax base to cover those expenses. So that thing gets spread out amongst all the other taxpayers in town, because you're gonna not diminish the rest of the services you have. So it's gonna cost individual homeowners and taxpayers significant money on your tax base, just on that alone. That's only if they did 190 unit. They do 2, it's gonna be even worse. Then it will compound the Whittier formula, it'll compound the school formula. So this from start to finish, as far as I can see, is so distasteful. And I don't know how much funds the state would be withholding, but if it's, you know, $1.5 million a year, you're at a net even. So, I know the state is looking to go after communities at this point with other legal issues. Again, and 2 or 3 years ago when this started, I worked with Tim Cronin, and they sent a letter to the state expressing all these concerns. This is not a reasonable zoning regulation for a town like West Newbury. And I think it has potential to drastically change the town. And you get one, there'll be others, it won't be just one. So I'm not in favor, I can't endorse it, and if somebody convinced me differently that, I mean, I'm in favor of affordable housing, but not at that density, at this level, and being forced upon you. I think it's grotesquely wrong what the state's doing. Other than
Yeah,
that, I'm good with it.
so, but I think the challenge is that we've already voted to comply with this and move forward, so,
I'm just saying, I never have,
yeah.
so
So,
I still,
so you're saying that you don't even wanna make suggestions on the bylaw because you object in principle to the whole?
I think it's wrong, and
Yeah.
my comments, if you don't do it.
All right. Rick, do you have specific comments on the bylaw?
I guess.
What do you say after that, right?
Most of them would be counter what Chris said. I in fact think it would be good for the town.
Mhm.
Yeah, the town has rejected a bunch of stuff. I think that we need housing. I think that being age demographics, socioeconomic, socioeconomically more diverse community would be good for the town. I don't have a problem with it in concept. I personally think it's a long time coming. And I don't think that this is. I think this can be done in such a way that it integrates well with the community. And provides something that the community doesn't currently have or offer.
So I have some specific questions on the bylaw, and what do you think the best way to do this is, Angus?
Well, if there are suggestions that are, clear enough that the board could take a position, then they could be offered as the board's comments. Otherwise, if it gets too arcane, maybe you offer comments as a member of the board, but not on behalf of the board.
Okay,
But maybe review them and see if, this one.
maybe this is clarification on the definitions, so this would be page 185 of the packet. Item 3, they're talking about, wetland resource areas together with the buffer zone around wetlands. I mean, it's not clear whether they're talking about the 100-foot buffer zone that relates to wetlands or just the Title V buffer, which I think is 50 feet. I think that could be clarified. Item 4, they're talking about protected open space. So I'm wondering if existing trails on municipal land that doesn't have a CR, whether that's also covered, if historical use or traditional use, will cover existing trails.
So your question is if there's trails there that aren't,
If it's not a
subject to
CR,
any
property,
easement, what about an easement?
I don't know, it just says a CR, currently protected, so it's just not clear to me what kinds of,
Whether other trails should be included as.
I would think, yeah, I mean, that is the functional use, I just want to be clear whether that would.
My guess is unless they're memorialized in a CR or an easement, they're not going to be recognized. I don't know that, but I did do a lot of work with this agency on a different policy. And,
Yeah,
it's,
that's how they,
if it's legal.
Yeah.
Yes, if it's not.
okay,
And it's a good question to ask.
yeah. I was just curious, on page 193, they exclude a boarding house, and I guess I can ask that question, why? It's interesting that there's a New York Times article that says, kind of back to the future of the boarding houses that were, like the original affordable housing, and some places in New York City are going back to that, but this excludes that from the types of structures. And I think Those were the only questions I had.
Sorry, Wendy, what page was that one?
That was,
93.
yeah, so it must be tied back to the zoning, maybe, but, yeah.
Well, in our existing zone, there is a reference to
Billboard
40,
house.
yeah, but I don't remember exactly where. It always seemed like kind of an arcane reference.
Right,
Yeah.
right. They've gone to great lengths to craft a certain type of structure that the whole thing will be built. They must see boarding houses being antithetical to that sometime.
The other question I had on this is the affordability requirements, page 204. 8.4.9.2 talks about a methodology of evaluations that's acceptable to the planning board. I think that should, I don't know if they know what that is, or they're gonna develop it in regulations maybe. Seems like we need to know what that is. And this is under the bonuses, 8.4.10 on that same page. It's saying that any proposed protected open space is subject to a recorded restriction enforceable by the town. But it seems like the town should be the grant, you know, on the easement if they're gonna be responsible for. And further, they talk about open space. I don't know if that's public open space or just the open space, you know, in the development. So if you both are okay with me asking this question, I mean, I'm not taking a position other than saying that the town should be a grantee if we're gonna be responsible for taking care of it.
Yeah.
Right. Are you going to,
Yeah, no,
Alright.
okay, questions.
okay. All right, so I'll just plan to ask those questions tomorrow night, I guess, so you guys don't have to do anything with that? Or do you, were you planning?
Yeah, if I run into Sue tomorrow, I will, you know, just give her a preview. I'm sure I will cross paths.
All right, so on to item G. Upcoming meeting dates. So this is page 208 of the packet.
So one wrinkle that I threw in, if you go back, it was, you know, looking back at the budget calendar is, I put in both January 29th and February 5th as kind of important dates. And I think there's some logic to having back-to-back meetings, because what's happened in the past is the date that the warrant is closed has been the same night that I've presented the budget. And that's often created a really, first of all, it's a lot for the board on a single packet, but putting, as you saw, that you know, those article requests, all the forms, I just remember it was very difficult because I was putting a huge effort toward building out the articles, because some of them come from sponsors all buttoned up, most of them don't. I think you understand that, my office does a lot of work on those articles, whether we sponsor them or not. And so doing that on the same night I'm presenting the budget it was just like
It's too much.
really difficult. So I intentionally put that into the calendar, penciling a warrant article or a warrant closing date of January 29th, and we presented the budget a week later on February 5th. So if you're amenable to that, then I think we need to kind of retool the
We
schedule.
don't have
And then I think-
February 5th listed here currently though, right?
No.
I'm sorry?
It's not currently on this. list.
No, it's not.
No, but it's on the budget calendar that I sent around.
Yeah,
So it's kind of being consistent with this. So, and then the January 2nd, I remember you had asked about that back in the fall. Is that really a good idea? And I think probably isn't a good idea.
Yeah, you'll be out the week before.
Yeah. So we need
So
it.
no.
Yeah.
so how about we do the week between those and then also get away from the Tuesday after Martin Luther King Day, so do the 8th.
So Monday the eighth and Monday the 22nd.
Maybe we can skip the 22nd and then do the 29th and the 5th.
And the 12th.
I'm gonna have a
Oh,
tough
no,
time on
it's
the
too
5th.
much, yeah.
Let's
That'd be three
do
meetings in a
three in a
row.
row, so. But, I mean, I don't know how else we get, what was that you said, Chris?
I probably cannot make the 5th.
Yeah.
Nothing changes.
Okay. Wait, February 5th?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's presenting the budget, the 5th, anything?
That's what I have penciled in, yeah.
Could it be the 12th since the FinCom isn't meeting until the 15th?
It could, the only problem is gonna be if you make changes to the budget. Because if I present it to the 5th and then you change it, that gives me, a few days to still, make changes and still get a FinCom a week ahead of their meeting on the 15th.
Mhm.
If you see it on the 12th, and if you don't like it, or there's things you wanna change, that's gonna be a time crunch with the FinCom on the 15th.
So, and then are you planning to be here for vacation or are you,
Yeah, I don't have any plans to,
okay, so that would be the 19th is a Monday holiday, right? Isn't that President's Day? Just if we're trying to change these meetings, okay. So I don't know what the solution is here, but, so,
February 6th.
oh, it's just that.
That one day.
Oh, okay. So how about February 6th?
sure.
That work? Rick, does that work for you?
So,
You were jockeying on the dates. Can we run through what they'll be eventually when we get this cleaned up?
Yeah, so let those are the 29th and the 6th are the two things that are in the schedule, so those have to be fixed, right?
Well, 29th, I think we were gonna.
I thought we were gonna keep 29.
Yeah, that's what I mean,
Yeah,
so
okay.
we start with those and then work back and try to. So then will we keep the 12th or no? February 12th? We don't need 3 weeks in a row, right?
I mean,
Perhaps that week we meet on the 15th with FinCom instead of the 12th?
But I mean, that was also, the 15th was also, floated as a potential, Pentucket school committee meeting. So there's a bunch of moving parts and it starts to bunch up.
Yeah, so how do you suggest we approach this then?
I mean, we could just set the first, 4 dates and then when we meet on the 8th, have a, more cohesive schedule.
Okay,
Yeah, we try to do this in advance and then, maybe that wasn't a good idea.
all right, so we're eliminating January 2nd, correct?
Yep, so let's go,
So that's gonna
Monday,
be
January
Yep,
8th, all right,
So
then,
January 8th, okay.
then Tuesday, the 16th,
why don't we go to,
I'll go to the 23rd or 22nd.
because then we'll have 3 meetings in a row. Let's just start with the 8th.
Okay, all right.
I mean, personally, so we do 3 in a row. I do this,
Okay,
we've done that before.
it's fine with me, I'm just trying to not
Yeah.
put a burden on Angus when he's
Yeah,
doing
is that-
other budgets.
Yeah, how's that for you, Wayne?
Well, it's hard to know, because, we don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
There's always a
Well,
lot.
there'll be no surprise between now and then.
Right, so, I mean, I think, we're gonna need, a number of meetings,
Yeah.
obviously, to get the budget presented and,
Well,
the
pencil it in
articles all
anyway, you can always
organized.
eliminate it at the meeting of the 8th.
Yeah, right, and I think it's,
So just keep the 16th and then have 2 weeks until the 29th. Why don't we do that?
I kinda like that, because
Yeah.
the date that I gave department heads is I'm expecting their budgets by the 11th. And I'm expecting the budgets of the boards, commissions, and committees by the 18th.
Mhm.
So those last 2 weeks of January, I'm gonna need to spend as much of that time putting together the budget as I can.
Okay,
8th, the 16th, the 29th, and February 6th.
Yep,
We'll go from there.
Good.
good, thank you.
All right, then in
So,
terms
so
of,
the meeting that currently is shown is the 12th of May. Who knows what'll happen with that at this point?
Right,
Okay.
Besides, that was
I
one of
think-
the other dates that the school had too.
that's right, yeah,
So let's hope for the 12th.
yeah, well, they offered the 12th. Carol said she was not gonna be available, and then they loaded the 15th, but nothing's been confirmed on that.
all right. Okay. Correspondence. With your tech response to our letter, this is kind of a moot point now because the vote's already happened. But I feel like the letter did not even address our proposal for a clause, so.
Well,
Frustrating.
I listened to the MSBA website
Oh,
you
yeah.
requested for the 43 hours of my life. Till we got to the Whittier.
Yeah,
They had like 9 proposals that are coming on board. Everybody's a few cents. Some of the towns have already voted the override, they haven't gotten anything. They get to the 3 that are being funded, the first 2 piece of cake, and the Whittier, the opposition was amazing. Reardon, the Havel mayor-elect and the outgoing mayor, all in support, but they acknowledged they've got an awful lot of correspondence, relative to the vote, to extensions, everything else. But they basically said, that's Whittier's problem. We're looking to give you money. If you don't want the money, that's fine. They made, the takeaway, the most critical point was, they will grant you an extension, 20, 30, 40 days. If it's a problem with the voting time frame, but you're still voting that project. It's not to come up with a new project, which you couldn't possibly do. And this money is for that project. If this project doesn't pass, it's gone, you start over. So there's no, that is all gone, that whole component. And they did say that this is one of the very rare occasions they've had a lot of opposition. There've been 3, and they have been on VOTEC schools. And that they told Whittier from the beginning to get out and let your people know. And
So Whittier told us they had already taken care of it.
in the meeting, Whittier said they'd done the whole it was a very strange.
Disconnect.
Yeah, and
Well, it was the letter, their reply to us was completely tongue deaf,
Yes.
I think it was the same letter they sent to everybody and then they just added a paragraph. It's all
Right,
to be
yeah.
specific.
Yeah.
yeah, but they knew that the state was gonna pass it, and the state had no resistance. They're going, hey, take the money or not. You go to your next process, and then Whittier was a 10-3 vote, or,
Yeah, it was
Yes,
something like
that's
that.
right.
we're curious as to who didn't vote. So my other question then would become, now this is gonna go, January 23rd. We've got voters in this town who know nothing about it. Most of the people in the district don't know about it. This is the crazy thing.
Right.
We were gonna send out a postcard, but that was just gonna say, here's the date, here's what it is, and here's what it's gonna cost you. I almost feel like we have an obligation to let the voters know what we think of this.
But to what end? I mean,
I think it's a disaster that Whittier has done this without letting everybody in on the process ahead of time.
yeah, I agree. So, but I guess my question is, are they overstating the case that if this doesn't pass, it's gonna cost us 400 million? I mean, are they gonna be forced to make all these upgrades?
Well, there was a letter from a gentleman from Raleigh,
Yeah.
right? Did you see that?
Yeah,
And he's saying the numbers they presented to the state were 1/3 of what Whittier is presenting to us.
Yeah.
And he said it's all documented. It's a pretty, he seems like a pretty intelligent fellow, done a lot of analytical study on it. So I don't know the answer to that. But, again, I think the regional agreement is faulty,
it is.
done in 1967 with a formula that's sticking it to the smaller communities in favoring Haverhill. I mean,
Well, the other thing is, I think when the district was formed, when they, at the time of construction of the school, somewhere, I thought I saw that the district didn't fund it. It was funded by state or federal money. And I could be wrong about that, but I thought I had read that somewhere in passing. Which would go a long way to explaining why towns, easily went along with it because, it's not costing us anything at this point, we're not thinking about 50-year towns.
mean, the vote is gonna be perilous, because if Haverhill gets the voters out, and the other towns are all asleep, which we are, because very few people know about this town.
Yeah.
Don't, I mean, you're gonna get stuck with this.
But I think Wendy asked, what's the nub of the question? And,
Do we advocate our position on, it? Do we take a stand?
no, but you were saying, so is it really true
Yeah,
that it's rejected? It defaults to this one thing, which looks really onerous.
yeah, and if that is true, I think we need to be careful about convincing people to.
Right, if that's true.
Right,
And
so how do we
what-
find out if that's true? I guess
You
that's
never
the
will.
question. Yeah.
Because the people that know whether it's true or not have brought you to this precipice.
Right.
And so, for me personally, just as a personal decision, I'm not believing them.
I don't
I think it's a
think,
bag job, and I think they have it over us.
Mhm.
And if anybody were to ask me, I would say, just vote no, and we'll find out the answer to your question.
it's the same thing we were told at Pentucket back 15 years ago, whatever time frame was when we had that palace in Merrimack we were gonna build, and it got voted down. They said it's gonna cost you more to repair the existing facilities. Well, we patched them together for 10 years and then came back around. I mean, Whittier doesn't have to go 10, you get back in line, come up with a plan that's more palatable, affordable, and reduced, and get back in
And
quicker.
it also gets into the whole question of who you're serving, how big should your school be, what number of programs, what's the infrastructure needed? So in a perfect world, I know that, I'd be just saying, start over, do it right, and don't include us in, because we gotta speak to what the support is for what you wanna get to.
In our letter, we asked that they consider, sort of a comprehensive as possible meeting that brought in people from all the communities that are involved, asking for, questions to be sent beforehand so that they could provide well thought out answers and, fully support the meeting with the people who develop the plan, the experts that they have available to them, and they don't seem to have responded to that.
Your letter was the most thoughtful response that they've seen the entire situation, I think. I mean, I thought it was well crafted.
Because we have a great chair.
Because the
You did a great job.
five of you work very well together.
But that letter, Wendy wrote,
Oh, okay, well, there you go.
you're not wrong, right? That particular letter.
All right, so where do we go from here? I mean, I agree with Chris that it's more than just trying to educate people, but I don't, do you
I
have?
mean,
any
Whittier never
comments?
gave us a presentation. That's it. The residents of this town have no idea what this is. And they're gonna come up against it, and they're gonna be stunned once they find out. But does that happen by January 23rd? I don't.
We'll just read about it in the local newspaper.
We did have a meeting on Friday, the town clerks in Whittier.
Mhm.
We had asked for clarification on if they could send out a mailer to all 11 communities
Yeah.
saying there's going to be an election, here's the question.
Mhm.
And they feel that is advocacy, and they won't be doing that.
Whittier
Yeah.
feels like it's advocacy?
That's not the truth.
Yeah.
It's not advocacy, it's bringing it to the light of day,
Right.
which will then
Oh,
sink their
that's-
project. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
They're hoping for the lowest possible turnout ever.
Because we tried to say, like, nobody's gonna know about this, it's weird, especially just the hours specifically. We wanted them to say, hey, there's an election happening at these hours, and they said, "No, thank you."
When do you meet again?
When do we meet again?
Yeah,
Well,
The eighth.
the eighth. January.
so whoever raised the question of how to get a notification out, you haven't got much time, whatever your response is gonna be.
I mean, are we allowed to advocate on this or not?
No,
Not in a mailer, but
no,
No,
not.
you could not, take a position and use public funds to take that position.
Okay, well, can we privately fund it? Say can the select board say it's paid for privately, that here's why we don't?
I did get an organizational, formation of a yes for Whittier campaign. So technically, anyone
You
can
can get a
go,
no for what you.
no Whittier.
Then the answer is yes, this.
So can we present, if the other two select people were interested, saying, here was our stance, are we allowed to do that?
Not as public officials,
This is it's unbelievable. They want us to take our money and spend it, but we can't recommend to the voters what to do. Every item, every,
through the mail.
You can,
yeah, we can't,
We have a meeting.
well, in January.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so when is the vote? The 21st?
sure.
23rd.
So you might have to have an agenda item early in January where you explain your point of view. And you might end up doing it.
It's not gonna reach enough, it's not gonna reach enough people. This is, they've done the calculus at Whittier on how this is gonna go.
I mean,
So she's still offering to come to the towns, right?
she keeps saying that she would, yeah.
Not for a meeting, we're sitting there, we're not in support of this. I don't think she would be too.
Well,
Somebody has looked at, say, a yes to Whittier. I wonder how many, have you asked the other towns if they've had other submittals on that same thing?
It seemed like it was a regional group. I think they just filed it with all cities and towns, I think. Because it wasn't, they weren't based in.
Yeah, they don't have to do it town by.
Right,
I
so
think they-
all the other, they're gonna file in all the towns.
I think they chose to, yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Because it's a local campaign, so there's no OCPF requirement, so they have to, I think it's 30 days prior to the election, they have to report any finances.
It's a ballot question, they're gonna have to make reports to the Office of Campaign Public Finance.
Because it's a local ballot question, not a state ballot question, it falls under a different thing.
This is a terrible way it's being set up. That's $450 million bucks.
well, I feel like we have an obligation to educate residents about this.
Yeah.
So I
You
don't,
can send out a mailer to a meeting, or you could send out a mailer saying, hey, there's an election coming up, this is the question. As long as there's no stance taken, there's nothing.
in the mailer, but
But as a select board, you have an obligation to let the voters know. If somebody's coming and looking to take $30 million of your money, to sit here and just say, hey, it's a good thing, if it's not.
You could send them a mailer saying there's going to be a public meeting on the 16th. And if you wanna come and express your opinion on it, you can.
so if we were to write up a position paper and not mail it or use public funds to distribute it, is that appropriate?
We could do it through the town. You could do it, say, beware, on the 23rd, there'll be a vote for Whittier. They're looking for X amount of dollars. Our share will be this over so many years. And we'll have a meeting on January 16th to have public input on it. That would cover it both. You get them a little bit of information, anybody who's curious enough to come out and see. That's what I would like to see, something like that happen. It's gonna have to happen quick, but
And if you had that as a presentation, that stance, whatever stance you wanna take, then it gets into the public domain.
They could make it at that meeting.
Yeah, right. You gotta do something, Wendy's right, you gotta do something. You don't wanna be in a position of people saying, hey, what? How come we didn't know about this? This is a big deal.
And again, we're like the smallest percentage of voters out, so the other towns gotta be doing this.
No,
No, I'm saying, I
big
hope they-
money.
I think it's gonna be insignificant, once we get the other towns to do it, is the problem.
Yeah, but like Wendy says, fine, whatever happens in election happens, but you gotta take care of your own. I think they need to be informed.
All right, so the challenge we have is that we just set a meeting schedule that, you know, has us going till the 8th with no, you know, no opportunity to collaborate on this. So, I mean, if you really want to educate people, I think write a one-page position paper, put it on Facebook, put it, you know, on the town email blast. I mean, those are allowed, right? I guess if we're not spending town money.
I would need to clear that.
All right.
I've had limited experience with this, but the experience I have both up in Maine and in my first few months here
Mhm.
leads me to be extremely cautious.
Yeah.
So
I guess if we're using
anything.
town
we would-
resources,
yeah,
even if it's
yeah.
not. okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, just when I started here, there was, at the time, you know, Park and Rec was pushing that idea for Don Field.
Mhm.
I had suggested a mailer which was extremely content neutral.
Yeah,
And, you know, it was actually Jean Nelson who was like, and she, I think, misunderstood. She thought I was advocating for it, and I wasn't at all.
yeah,
But anyway, like, and I did a lot of research and pulled a lot of the campaign finance stuff that Jim's referring to. There is some nuance there in terms of whether it's a ballot question or a town meeting article, and it's been a little while since I've looked at that, but I would run anything.
Right.
Well, so for instance, when, you know, a year ago, when the Concom was looking to do like a mailer on the wetlands file, I cautioned Michelle.
yeah.
It's fine if it's content neutral, but I told her in very explicit terms, the specific mailer would need to go through legal, because we're not taking any kind of chance of
So
some
we
kind
don't have
of
the,
electioneering
Yeah.
or some kind of thing. You have to be really cautious.
all right, so what do we want to do here? Are you thinking, Chris, just add this to our January 8th agenda? And try to get,
What date is the election again?
23rd.
23rd.
I guess it's the best we can do, and I could think of, I've had a couple of phone calls on this, I can think of one person who made a post on Facebook, and if we can put it on the agenda for January 8th, see if we can get some people interested to learn about it, because it's just crazy.
all right. Any thoughts, Rick? I mean, I feel like we're running out of time to do anything,
We are.
and we're also kind of handcuffed.
I feel like that's part of the plan.
Anybody, we could dictate a meeting, dictate a letter now, and, if somebody feels like they have wording at the tip of their tongue, and, it'll be recorded and could be taken from that.
I mean, I think a mailing would be date and time of the election. If you
Yeah.
have a public information meeting, you could do that. I don't think there's any question. There's no question about that.
But you could probably use the amount that's a public amount.
Yeah, factual information, yeah.
You're back.
I did post it, just so you all know, the warrant is on, so if you go to the 23rd on the calendar. The warrant is on there. I'm waiting to get a digital version, which they promised me I would get, and I haven't gotten yet. So I was gonna put that on the email blast. But the language is out there already for the warrant.
So,
So if you wanted to do like a postcard that simply said, there's a special election on such and such. And, the select board's hosting a, you know, a public information session or listening session on such and such date. And you can mail that to every household in town. You know, you could even, I don't know, I think you could say, you know, follow the town webpage for more details or something.
All right, but if we're not meeting again till the 8th, do we really have time to put that together, or is that something?
Well, I think you need to really give that direction, you know, tonight and,
well, yeah, I mean, that's, you know, my point is, it's all factual.
Yeah.
We could say what should be on it right now and vote on.
I mean, you could have, you know, a one topic meeting on the second, that would, you know, that would put it really on Jim and Rebecca to work with, you know, you over the holiday, and I think you guys have time on. As well, no, you'd be there, okay. So, but you could review something on the second, it could go to the, you know,
Mhm.
print shop. The third, and be probably in the mail on the fifth.
All right, well, what do you think about that? I mean, I think just getting
But
people,
it's really just gonna be like date and time.
but that's
Yeah.
fine, we
Yeah.
want people to show up.
You can't say, we need a building project,
No, there's things you could say.
$446 million, West Newbury share.
We could say that, we could say
Yeah.
that, we can say the publicly known factual information. We can, I mean, that should.
Number of students, average cost.
It shouldn't be, but I will wanna put it through legal, so.
Yeah, and Chris, I don't think you wanna say
Probably
number
no
of
issue,
students
but
and
it's
average,
not
I think then you're starting to play with numbers. Because,
Capture their attention with the amount.
Yeah.
People are gonna recognize the amount is
Right.
humongous. That will get them to start asking, well, tell us more. So I would make it as simple as you can with the largest number you can show.
Just so you know, right now, the warrant states, vote on the following question: do you approve of the vote of regional district school committee of Whittier Regional Vocational School District adopted December 13th, 2023, to authorize the borrowing of $444,613,813 to pay for the costs of design, and just says, that's it.
So what if the postcard said, we wouldn't even need to meet for this, it just said Whittier Regional Vocational School or Vocational Technical School vote. And then had
The language that's.
the language on that. For discussion, either somehow work in for discussion, attend, West Newbury Select Board meeting,
January.
But please feel,
or Monday, January
please feel free to make the notation of what West Newbury's cost will be of that. We have that amount.
8th. Yeah,
We have that amount with interest. So it's gonna cost this much per year. That's a fact. We can state that, right, Angus?
I mean, it's gonna vary year to year, it's gonna.
Okay, so there's a word that says,
Yeah,
in 18 of the,
Well, we didn't put out the numbers.
yeah,
Put the numbers,
Yeah.
make them up.
so I wouldn't hesitate to disclose to our people what our cost is gonna be. I agree with you, give them the amount of the building plus the amount of interest, give the West Newbury amount. That's gonna peak interest, that's all they need to know. I mean, anybody looking at numbers gonna know it's significant.
We'll list the date and specifically be aware of the hours of the vote. And that there's no, what's it called, mail-in?
Early voting.
There's no other voting privileges, you gotta you have to show up or do absentee, right?
All right, so if I work with Jim's office, to finalize this, how much time do you think legal's gonna be able to review it?
if it's as simple as what you're describing, you can
Okay.
turn it right around, right?
Okay,
So you're looking for permission to do that.
what's that?
You're looking for permission to do that, right?
yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with that, as long as it's all factual information, and, you know, and if we refer to West Newbury share, I would say that we should say, you know, Whittier, district estimates West Newbury share to
Yeah,
be.
that's good.
You know, we should be really careful how we phrase things, and
So if Max and I can come up with a rendering.
Yeah,
One of you.
yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Make the mail-in in the shape of a W, so it'll look like a school. I know it costs, but
That
don't.
would be, no, but that would be great.
I was thinking it's square.
all right,
Correct.
I move that we,
And we'll have a meeting on the 8th to discuss it,
We have
It'll be
a
on the
meeting
agenda.
anyway, it'll be on the agenda.
and that'll be on the mail too, it'll note that.
Yes. but
Rick,
this
are you
is not-
making a motion?
I'm trying to, but I'm letting,
This is not gonna be a free-for-all, like 3-hour meeting on this,
no,
so
Yeah.
we need to think about that, unless you wanna have a separate meeting just for this.
No, I don't think that's being free for all, I think
We could have a meeting on the 2nd,
you pick
and
the
just,
date.
no, so what I'm saying is that Angus won't need to prepare for this, we could have a meeting on the 2nd to talk about Whittier.
Which is fine with me, but the next question, do you invite Whittier?
sure,
I think it's a courtesy to have to,
I think
and
we
Chip,
are,
our representative,
Yeah,
but I think we do it as, we put on, here's what we understand it to be. Here's what Whittier has to say, what are your questions? And maybe set a timeline, maybe it goes from X to Z.
what do you think about that, Angus? We have,
I agree with Chris that if you're gonna have a dedicated meeting,
Yeah.
it makes sense to let
but
them know.
what do you think about having an additional meeting to talk about that?
I think it's, you know, I think it's fine because it's really just to get your thoughts
Yeah,
clear for the following, you know, if there's a broadly advertised meeting the following week, it makes sense to, you know, have some crystallized thinking on that.
We're under the gun to get the postcard done, legal, printed and out.
yeah, so right now we're meeting, sorry, the 8th and the 16th.
right,
Well, I mean, we could work to get the postcard. Finalized.
We can get the postcard out, and if you want to do final approval on like January 2nd.
Well, no, ideally, the postcard's going out next week.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
Okay.
so that we can meet on the second.
Okay.
That seems very ambitious, but. And unlikely that they'll be able to attend on the second, but.
Not to mention getting a great house to be able to do it that kind of anyway. Oh. 2,000 also?
We have the student at Whittier for
I don't know, I'm sorry, see, it's past 9:30, I'm really great now.
I mean, my feeling is you just go stepwise, you know, you work on the postcard, get it legal, I think Tim will turn it around, I'll give him a heads up, it's coming, you know, you can turn it around quickly.
How about the eighth?
And then you find out, can the print shop turn around in 2 days, or it's gonna take them a week, and just go stepwise, if you need a meeting on a. You know, I think that the date that you need to decide is when's the info session, is it the 8th, or is it the, what's the 16th is the next meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I guess if we are.
23rd is the date?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that,
16th is just a week.
right,
like that, in a way, that's better than.
in a way that's better, because it's like,
That's how we used to mail postcards for elections. Why do we-
Unless Whittier were to show up and actually have legitimate information.
Well, that's fine.
well, but I believe your intent is not to push the vote one way or the other, it's to
No.
share information.
No,
So why is that?
but, you know, my point is that if Whittier has some kind of information that makes sense, then I mean, the discussion should be informative to people.
Mhm.
It shouldn't be just to trash
Right,
what's been proposed, it should be informative across the board. So,
So does the 16th work?
I,
Doesn't it?
We have pencil that in for the lobby, we
Yeah.
can swap that out.
No, I think we should do it the 16th,
I
we're
agree.
meeting the 8th.
Yeah.
You know,
Too
there's
soon
not
to
gonna
the
be a whole
holidays
lot
could be a
of
problem.
additional information.
Too soon to the holidays could be a problem.
Yeah, so let's tentatively plan on that, but the first priority is to get the postcard together, so, all right, and I will have, once we finalize it, have Jim send it to you guys, and we can get your comments.
I'll trust you and Jim. I mean, again, it's just what we just said. Here's the
Alright.
cost. West Newbury for Whittier.
Mhm.
Here's the vote, the day of the vote, the hours,
Okay,
no early voting.
Yeah.
We're having a forum if you want to come talk on this date.
all right, so,
since this is a public action, we probably need a motion, and we need to vote for it. So,
Okay. go ahead.
I mean, don't we?
Yeah,
So,
we tried to do this
so,
already, and we-
right,
it's real
right.
too.
So, you know, I move that that Wendy will compose a postcard using the factual information that's available. Much of it will be from the existing wording on the ballot. Other information that could be mentioned would be, specific financial, estimates, for you know, tax.
Supply it with my video.
And that's it.
All right,
Second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. So we should probably invite Whittier now, right?
Yep.
So should I just send an email, I guess? What is the appropriate way to do that?
sure, yeah, her letter was addressed to the board, so if you're.
Does it have to be a letter, or can I just send an email? Okay.
We're having a committee meeting on the 16th.
Yeah, okay.
Do you want to do Chip O'Connor?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, if you want to reach out to him, that'd be great.
You, okay.
All right. Future agenda items. I guess I have my follow-up assignment.
I do.
All right,
Okay, first off, so, you know, 2 or 3 meetings ago, the board majority voted, against putting up the warning signs for the Roxville Bridge.
Mhm.
We did touch on the possibility of Roxville Bridge, sort of a warning system, you know,
Mhm.
some sensor and, presumably lighting, you know, warning lighting, to go with it. And, you know, there was some from a resident, we got an email with the name of one company. I know I had looked back when we were talking about this many months ago. It may have been the same company that I found, but there's at least one company out there that makes systems. supported to do what we need to be done. So do we want to pursue that or not? And because my personal feeling is that there's a disaster waiting to happen. It might happen tomorrow, it might not happen for 10 years. But I think it's likely to happen again and everything. It's our responsibility to try to prevent it happening.
Yeah, I agree. It's on my list of things. I'm just not sure, given Angus's current work.
Right, and that was sort of the follow on. I know that there's an incredible workload already lined up. And so, how do we deal with this?
Is this something that Christine could look into?
I think I got the gist of it, sorry, I had to go plan it. So is the idea to look into the feasibility and how it would actually work for some kind of, like flashing?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the
So
assessor
is
needed-
the idea to get, what's your,
I think the first thing is to just reach out to this company and.
The vendor.
Yeah, the vendor and, to explain the application, see if it's something they could, give us some guidance on.
Yeah, but if someone gave us a quote, like that could be brought for funding at the Springtown meeting.
Is that
Or
something
through
that
We just
you
want to put this on the
wanna
agenda versus discuss it.
Sure, I can, I mean, we've got what was that, 2 meetings ago, I'll have to find out, which meeting that was.
research? You want to have an email from.
Okay, all right, great, thanks.
Great.
Okay,
I
anything
mean,
else?
it may not be a no-brainer, because the system was the stuff they referred to was in the southeast.
Mhm.
We have different weather here, and that which may affect the sensors that have to pick, to pick up the vehicle, but anyway.
But you'll find that out.
Um,
All right, well, if you can do that as a first step, and then if
Yeah,
we need to have.
okay.
staff,
Okay,
All right,
I actually, another topic that I think I mentioned before, and I had this, I talked about possibly, exploring having energy audits done for, this building, the library, and the public safety complex. I know this building, one of the rooftop units, based on feedback Brian has from vendor, is it's still operating, can still be repaired, but it's probably, it's late in life, and just leave it at that. And if we make changes to things, we should do it intelligently as possible. So, we could go with, a single company that would do some comprehensive energy audits with recommendations of upgrades to bring the buildings. And that would be implemented over a number of years to make the buildings, essentially carbon neutral, to ultimately convert everything to electric. It's not something, the conversion wouldn't happen immediately, but, until you have a plan, you don't know what you have to do.
okay,
So I just mentioned this in passing here, I mentioned it in passing at a Energy and Sustainability Committee meeting, and, before I go any farther with talking about an Energy and Sustainability Committee, I just wanted to see if this board and if, town staff, were able to be supportive of it. The goal would be for there to be minimum demand on town staff, if we found a turnkey.
and how would we pay for
That's,
TBD?
TBD, yeah.
I think before, for me personally, before I say yeah in favor of it.
Yeah, okay.
What do you think, Chris?
I don't know enough about it yet. Again, these is what the future agenda has to put on the next meeting.
Yeah, this is not anything, this is not a commitment, it's just, it's worth, I don't wanna put time into it if my sense is that people are not supportive of it at all, so. And,
Conceptually, it seems fine to me, but I don't think the
yeah,
details of what. And relative priority.
right, yeah, I understand. And, Angus, you should say exactly what you think, because I know you've got too much on your plate already, and, you know,
Yeah,
I'm not trying to add more, I'm just trying to get.
yeah, I mean, it matters to everything about what timeline
Yeah.
you're thinking about.
Yeah, okay, there's no, as I see it, it's not an immediate timeline, it's just that I'd rather start the process now than for us to have a piece of, you know, a $250,000 piece of equipment die and have to, or whatever the cost is, and have to replace it under duress and have made a bad decision in doing that.
Okay. All right,
Sure.
all right,
Second,
all right, all in favor?
I,
Okay.